Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of the Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board to order. The meeting agenda stands as you have it before you. Did we all have a chance to review the November 18th minutes? Could I hear a motion to approve? All in favor? Second.
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. Very good. And just so everyone is aware, the Goomer Hollow public hearing is scheduled for January 6th at 7 p.m. Let's see, we have a few minutes, maybe we can do the, oh, yes, could I hear a motion to accept Jim's meeting notes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. I think we have time to do that. We had one referral from the ZBA about Entner, 2 variances, they're on Violet Hill Road. Did you have a chance to review those? I think in here somewhere I have a resolution. Actually, I know I have a resolution. Okay, let me read this to you and then any discussion we might have. The 2 variances are being requested, the construction of 2 additional detached structures, a 3-car garage and a 2-bedroom pool house. A pool is also proposed to be installed along with an associated septic system. The variances are to permit 4 accessory structures, only 3 are permitted in the RC5 district, and to permit more than more than the permitted aggregate square footage of roofed accessory structures is 1,500 square feet, and they want to go up to 3,845 square feet. The resolution I have here is the Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board, upon referral by the ZBA of an application by Darren Davidovich on behalf of Barry Entner to construct 2 additional detached structures at 41 Violet Hill Road in the RC5 zoning district. 1, finds the requested variances raise no significant planning or environmental concerns. 2, recommends that the ZBA rely upon its own study of the facts in deciding the application in accordance with the criteria and procedures set forth in Town Code Chapter 125, Sections 125.75A7 and 125.27A4, including consideration of the input of neighboring property owners. Could I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Very good, thank you. All right, having done that, how many more minutes do we have? Our first public hearing. 2 to 3. Okay. Well, let's see. Oh, discussion about setting a second meeting in February. This was discussed. What?
You gotta do the January.
Oh, the second one in January, yes. We had scheduled one for the 18th, I believe.
Just get this January?
No,
For the 21st.
the additional meeting in January.
The 21st. Is that one is still on, right? Okay. All right, moving right along. We have a second one scheduled on February 18th, a Tuesday. That's second February meeting. And for the convenience of some people, we were wondering if we could move it to Tuesday, February the 25th. I believe that's what we were talking about doing. Would that be,
Okay.
could I have a motion to move it
So
to
instead of the 18th of February, you want to move it over
the 25th? Yes. Oh, I heard a bell ring. Could I hear a motion to move the meeting?
So
I
moved.
move to move.
Second? Any discussion? All in favor? Very good, okay. So our second February meeting is February 25th, Tuesday, February 25th. Thank you.
And then the first March one will follow just a week later?
Right,
On the
correct.
2nd.
Yes, March 2nd. And then we have 2 in April.
You have to do the January 21st special
Send
meeting.
it out in correspondence, so we'll all get it.
Yes.
You just announced that.
But don't you have to make a motion?
Announce
Do you have a
what?
motion
For the special
21st
meeting?
as a special meeting?
Didn't we
For
already,
January
set
21st.
I
that?
thought we did.
I think we already set that one up, didn't we? That's for,
No, we talked about it, but we had to do it. It's
Well, I'll
on
make
the,
that
Oh.
motion.
and could I hear a second to have the special meeting on January 21st? It is for the large projects, Grassmere, KPH2, and Rockledge to present where they are, what they're doing, so we know where we're going with those 3
It's to
projects.
replace the one that was canceled. because
Correct.
of-
This is the one, second? All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Oh, it's gotta be on. Okay, first public hearing. Henry Stout, 139 Montgomery Street, site plan, single-family dwelling on town and village property.
Good evening. Any questions?
I think you need to describe to the public what you're proposing to do.
Okay. I'm proposing to build a house at 139 Montgomery Street. You can see the driveway comes in off the existing pavement, the parking area, and then a house there, as indicated on there.
Perhaps you could describe the house, describe where the septic system is going to go, describe some of the constraints on the property that should led you to design that the way you designed it.
Absolutely. The house is, it's basically a barn house. It's going to look like a barn. And it is 3 bedrooms, kitchen. I think we have 4 bath. And the property is complex, given that it is a combination of village and town. And due to the fact that a majority of the property, as you can see, there's a lot of wetlands. The septic is in front of the house. So you have the wetland, then you have a 100-foot buffer. And there's basically one area on the property that's suitable to build, one area on the property that is suitable for a septic system. We did have a question from the Board of Health relative to, given the proximity of the house to this line here is the 100-foot adjacent area. This is the wetland. This is 100 feet. So as you can see, the house, the septic come right up to that line. The Board of Health had a question about how construction might take place where we wouldn't have to disturb some of this area inside the buffer. Therefore, this line here indicates a silt fence, but it also indicates, I believe it's a 30-foot access that is approved by the Department of Environmental Conservation for construction. We do have the permit in hand for that, which addressed that concern from the Board of Health. We will utilize municipal water. The last site plan had a well indicated, the well is gone. That has been confirmed with the village. And there's an outstanding question relative to how the building departments will interface the town and village. Mr. Fenton did ask me to inquire as to whether the town is going to want to do its own inspections in addition to his, or whether there could be some agreement between the town and village where where the building inspectors agree to work together, so we don't have to have 2 separate municipalities inspecting the house on account of the fact that we have this portion here in the town. The vast majority of improvements are in the village, including utilities, driveways, and the majority of the house. This is a small portion of a bedroom and probably cuts off a bathroom. This is a large open area in the middle of the house. There's a downstairs library and TV room, and then 2 bedrooms upstairs. So basically, on the town side, you have primarily living room and maybe 1 bedroom overall storage.
I understand the site visit has not successfully been completed yet, so that is something that will have to be rescheduled.
Was it unsuccessful?
I believe anything done at 5 o'clock on December 13th in a pouring rainstorm is not adequate to look at a building site to see where the building's going to go, where the leach field's going to go, where all these different... There's no way in the world that we'll be able to tell exactly what's going on that site. And we depend upon a proper site plan and daylight hours, so
That's
that's why
fine.
we have to be rescheduled.
That's fine.
Questions from the
In the
board?
applicant's defense, that was the only time it was available, and Woody has not yet been able to, together with me, reschedule a time to take the place in what was originally scheduled for the site visit. So it's my understanding that there will be a continuance
Yes,
tonight.
we will have to
And
continue
so
the
we'll
public hearing.
reschedule both of us in the daylight.
We could have a different, if you two would prefer, who would like to do the site visit? Would you two like to go back in daylight hours?
Sure.
I have no problem with
Okay, so
Okay.
you'll arrange to do that.
Yeah, if it is, for the record, if it is a snow day, an official snow day, we will need to reschedule it.
Yeah.
And then
Which is what happened.
that's understandable.
Yeah.
Questions from members of the board?
There's a subdivision occurring?
No, there is not.
There is not.
That was a discussion, there was one lot and one deed, it's just happens to have a municipal board going
Right.
through it, but that doesn't count as a lot line.
That information was in some paperwork that was submitted, but Henry's fixed that paperwork at my request. So I think we're all set on that. So there are no confusion in the future.
Sorry for that.
Any other questions from the board at this time? I'll open it up to the public. What I'd ask you to do is if you have a comment or question or something, please come up to the microphone, identify yourself, and ask your question or share your comment.
Can I just ask a quick question from the, okay.
This way we get it on the record, so if you have
Okay.
any question.
I'm just interested to know exactly where it is on Montgomery Street. Is there a landmark or something close to it that you could say is next to this
Yeah.
or south of that?
Yeah, if you're coming into Rhinebeck,
Yeah.
there's a bridge over the Rhinebeck Kill
Oh, yeah.
with stone. It's immediately on the left,
Okay.
after that bridge.
Okay, so it's, would be right before you get into the village, basically, on the left as you're coming.
It's where the village sidewalk is. I think it is the last parcel in the village. So it's at the end of the sidewalk. It's at the kind of the bottom of the hill.
Bottom of the hill, and the
Yep.
30-mile-an-hour speed zone.
I think it's, the speed limit changes immediately. Right before so you go across the bridge, Old Post Road cuts
Yeah.
off. This is the parcel in there on the right.
Okay, sorry to trouble you.
No trouble at all.
It's a great map, but I just couldn't place it. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments at the moment?
It's kind of diagonal from like the automotive place that we need. There's like that little Matchbox Cafe and all that.
I'm not aware of an automotive place.
No, it's not.
It's nowhere near that. That's on the south of the village. This is on the north side of the village.
Oh, okay, got it, thanks.
Not hearing anything more, what I would like to do is get a resolution to continue this public hearing to 6:45 on February 3rd.
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Very good. And Woody and Kathy will arrange the site visit with you.
That's on account of the site visit?
Yes.
Impressive.
We're still waiting for help.
And we're also still waiting for information from the health department.
Hmm?
Henry, we're also still waiting for information from the health department. Dave Pearson has been in touch with me, and they still have some questions. And so we're going to need to have the health department approve your septic system before we can approve a special use permit and site plan.
That makes
Allow
more
you to
sense.
get a building permit.
Yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
I just,
This is Rich Roth, he's the
Yeah.
engineer.
I prepared the site plan. My only question is, why do we need to keep the public hearing open? I mean, I can see that we can't make a decision tonight based on the fact that you haven't done a site visit, and also that you need the approval from the health department. But there was nobody really that showed up from the public that had any kind of substantial comments. So I'm wondering why we can't just close the public hearing and then continue the meeting.
Because all the information given to us about what we're asking for from the site visit, from the health department, anything like that, is public information, and members of the public may at some point wish to comment on that. So until all information has been gathered and all public comment has been gathered up, we keep the public hearing open. There's also the fact that once the public hearing is closed, we are under a time limit, and we have to make a decision on this particular application. And if perhaps the applicant runs into a certain problem, needs more time, something like that, it can make things a little difficult. So until we have all the information that we require and need, we keep the public hearing open, and the public is free to examine all that information and to come to the public hearing if they have any further questions about anything that might come up in the information that we're still waiting for.
So we're probably, based on the rate of review of the health department application to this point, I'm not sure when we'll receive an approval from the Board of Health. I mean, that could go on 3 to 4 more months, so therefore the public hearing will be open for 3 or 4 months.
Yes.
Okay.
But if the Board of Health gives it approval, then we're going to keep.
It can go more quickly, yes. Once we get the information we require, yes, it can go more quickly.
Does anybody have any questions for Rich while he's here, so I don't have to continue to bring him back?
No, I think that basically, I think he's working with the health department. This
Yeah,
department
absolutely.
That resolved, and I think that once that's done, the health department will so inform us.
Okay, I have one other question, which is, I guess, a Gretchen question, administrative. I hope I don't have to go through the process of sending out 30 certified mails for every meeting.
No, that's why we're continuing the public hearing to specify a date, making the announcement tonight. If we find a position where there's a problem, and all of a sudden we have to continue the public hearing to an undetermined date, then yes, it has to be renoticed. So that's what you don't want to do.
What would trigger that?
I don't, if you run into a problem, let's say you run into a problem with the septic system, something like that, I don't know. But something that's going to take longer than a few weeks or whatever to try and resolve, and you don't know exactly when you'll be able to come back before us, that could trigger that.
I guess we'll cross that bridge. I don't quite understand it, but I guess we'll cross that bridge if we come to it.
Well, hopefully we won't have to.
Right. I mean, so the inability to have a site visit doesn't qualify as a problem of that nature.
No, no, because you can certainly get the site visit in before February 3rd, which is when this...
So something that would be identified in a meeting that would be unable to be addressed prior to the next
It's
meeting.
more likely, say, you weren't getting information back from the health department, and there was a real holdup there, and then you said, you don't know when you're going to hear. Then you might ask, don't schedule us for the next meeting, we'll wait for that, and then we went 2 or 3 months between.
If there's not a continuum. It's the same thing as when my prior application, that more than 6 months went by, we had to restart the whole
Right.
process.
Yes.
Okay, so the date of the next meeting and
It's February 3rd at
February 3rd.
6:45. We'll pick up the public hearing then. Hopefully you'll hear from the health department by then. They'll certainly have had the site visit by then.
Yeah, I mean, to date, the health department has taken, 3 months to respond to the set of comments?
it's from the time we submit to the time we get a next response. It's generally some number of months.
So what we can do is if you feel that it's going to be 3 months before you're going to have the information, if you so inform us on February 3rd to that effect, then we can schedule the continuation of the public hearing until whether that be May of whatever at a specific time so that
As long as it's a continuation,
as
then
long
we
as
don't
it's
have
a
to reset
continuation
all.
and we've been able to announce the date and the time, no,
Yeah.
you do not have to renew this.
Understood.
Perhaps as we get closer to the finish line, the pace of the comments will increase.
It has happened in the past.
And when do we schedule the site visit?
That's between you three. Though you guys get together on that and find the time you're free
During
to get
daylight,
there.
right, for you and us.
Yes,
Yes.
I understand. that,
Thank you
yes.
for trying to accommodate that
Yeah.
time.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
We know how to plan, yeah. You can call us if you want.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, our next public hearing. Carl Scott, Rhinebeck, 125 Wittenberg Road, site plan and special use permit, ground mounted solar.
Hello, nice to see everyone again. My name is Lee Springstead. I work at Suncommon, and I'm here on behalf of Suncommon and Carolyn Scott and Rod Neff. This project is a 76-panel ground mount solar array at 125 Wurtemberg Road. The parcel is 35.59 acres, and the array is just about centered right in the middle of the parcel, completely shrouded by pre-existing dense growth vegetation, hardwoods, deciduous trees, and evergreen mix. We meet all property line setbacks. And there was a site visit, I believe, successful. So does anyone have any questions?
Well, I think the first thing I would do is actually have the people who did the site visit give their report. That might answer some of the questions people might have.
Yeah, here's my.
Michael and I were able to go to the property. There is a long drive-in. The foundation for the house is now in place. The property is surrounded, or this building site is surrounded by what looks like mostly hardwoods, but there are also lots of ridges, so that the house is, and the solar array, it looks like they will be fully protected from view from any neighbor. The solar array is in kind of a depression or a little valley in back of the house, which also helps to keep it from view from both the house and any neighbors. Michael, anything to add to that?
I don't have much to add to that. It seems like a perfect location for something. There's no way anyone can see it unless they're actually on the property and actually quite close to it. It's actually a gully almost that the solar panels are being put in. So, no, they're definitely not going to be seen by anyone other than the owners of the property. And does the CAD have a report?
And I don't believe it reached Gretchen, did it?
I don't know.
Okay, I have one to hand out. Okay, and cutting to the chase, the CAB report says the proposed location of the arrays is in a depressed area between two rises in a specially prepared area suitable for the application, sited facing south. There is a vernal pond wetland beyond the eastern rise, as well as a seasonal small stream. It is the opinion of the Conservation Advisory Board that the application as proposed will have no impact on the vernal pond wetland or the seasonal stream, and that a special use permit would be in accordance with the Town of Rhinebeck Wetlands Code. Respectfully, Nancy Richard.
Thank you. Aaron?
The armature, support armature for this is what type?
This will be a techno middle post racking, so there'll be ground screws.
Okay. Ground screws, the posts are driven around and then stabilize the ground screws?
Yeah, a ground screw is thick steel, thick galvanized steel, giant screw, about as tall as I am, that goes into the ground and secures the racking.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the board?
There's a couple comments. So previously I'd asked that the wetlands be shown on the plans, and those have been added by the applicant, so thank you for that. And I'd also asked a question about the total square footage of the solar array versus the footprint of the house, which is part of the code, and that meets code, so we don't have any issues there as well. I just wanted to note in the resolution, I had two conditions in there. I just wanted to raise one. I didn't see a date on the plans. I thought we should have that added before it gets stamped and sealed, and the other was
A date of the last edit?
yeah.
That I do actually have a set that was, that included.
Is it dated and included all that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Then maybe we're okay, then you can disregard the additions I had.
Thank you.
Resolution.
Anyone from the public, comment, question? Hearing none and seeing none, could I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion.
Second? All in favor? With that, I have a draft approval resolution. The Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board hereby acts as follows in the application by Carolyn Scott and Rob Neff for site plan approval and special use permit of the Town Code Chapter 125 respectively to authorize the installation of a ground-mounted solar array at 125 Wittenberg Road within the RC5 Rural Countryside Zoning District. One, reaffirms the proposed action as unlisted under seeker action for which coordinated environmental quality review is precluded, based upon review of submitted information, including reports from planning board members and the CAB members on their site visit to the project property, finds the proposed work is consistent with the objectives stated in Chapter 125. With respect to the application for special use permit to authorize work, finds the proposed work and intended use to be consistent with general standards for special use permits set forth in Town Code Chapter 125-67, and grants the requested special use permit conditional upon receipt of a site plan approval by the planning board. With respect to the application for site plan approval, finds the proposed work and intended use to be consistent with Town Code Chapter 125-47, and approves the application inclusive of the application materials and plan sheets by Jeff Irish, Sun Common. He authorizes the planning board chair to stamp and sign the above cited site plan upon the applicant's satisfaction of below conditions and or requirements within 6 calendar months of the adoption of this resolution. Submission of the above cited site plan in the form and number specified in the Town Code Chapter 125, Section 125-78B, except as may be modified to a lesser number by the chair in consideration of filing and distribution requirements. Payment of any outstanding fees and reimbursable amounts due to the Town of Rhinebeck related to the review and processing of this application, and receipt of all approvals, authorizations, or certifications required herein or from any other town, county, state, or other agency as required to undertake the proposed actions. Could I hear a motion to approve? Second.
Second.
I will poll the board. Eric. Edna. Sharon. Melody. Kathy. Woody.
Aye.
And I vote aye. So what you gotta do is get the plan, date and all that to me, so that I can stamp and sign it, after which you will be able to go and get a building permit.
May I leave that with Gretchen tonight?
Yes, if it's ready to be stamped and signed, absolutely.
Okay, and I have a whole bunch of other paperwork and stuff to do, the originals of all the mailers and stuff. Do you want me to just do that?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next. Jasmine, Jonathan Mensch, the site plan and special use permit renewal. So everyone understands what this is. This is not a new proposal, this is not a new site plan, this is not anything different. This is what we approved 18 months ago, I think it was, and it is due to expire in 2 days. So just to retain this special use permit and site plan, tonight we are just going through the process to reaffirm and reapprove those. On the 26th, is that a special meeting, the 26th? 21st? I'm glad someone knows what it is. The new plans, the amended site plan and the amended documentation for Grassmere will be being presented to the public. It's a public hearing, but it will be presented that time at the public. That's not what this is happening tonight. This is strictly to reissue, in essence, the existing special use permit and site plan approval so that they don't run out in 2 days, so that they are still in force. Jonathan, do you have anything you wish to add?
No, that's.
Okay. Questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Could I hear a motion to close the public hearing? A second.
Second.
All in favor?
May I ask Jonathan a question?
Yes, sir.
Jonathan, you have your address for that site, it's 29 Mill Road. At somewhere in time when you start advertising to the world, that's not going to be the entrance.
No, that's not going to be the entrance.
Might it be confusing, the 29 Mill Road, and people are going to go to 29 Mill Road? Just enough to cover.
No, the entrance is going to be off of Route 9. I'm not sure. I haven't actually thought of it.
Just something to think about.
Yeah. No, there's going to be all the public entrances out, no, but there's a shuttle. So yeah, so it would make sense.
Any questions, comments from the public? Could I have a motion to close the public hearing? So moved. Second? I already did that? Oh. I think I'm going home now. In that case, I will read a resolution. The Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board hereby acts on applications by Mensch Grassmere LLC for reissuance of approvals for special use permit and site plan review and approval under Town Code Chapter 125 zoning to authorize the construction of a Country Inn 2 located at 29 Mill Road in the Rural Agriculture RA10 zoning district as depicted or otherwise described in applications for special use permit and site plan review and approval enumerated in the approval resolutions of October 5th, 2015 and August 17th, 2015, and reissuance approval resolution of June 18th, 2018. Reaffirms its prior classification of the proposed actions as type 1 under seeker. The overall development plan has previously been the subject of the planning board's resolution issuing a statement of findings under seeker on March 3rd, 2014, including the dated issuance of a statement of consistency with the coastal policies on August 7th, 2014, both of which the planning board reconfirms at this time. 2, with respect to the application for special permit to authorize work, finds proposed work to conform to both the general standards for special use permit uses set forth in section 12567 of the town zoning law and specific standards for Country Inn 2 set forth in section 125-68 MM. Grants the requested reissuance of the special use permit described in the approval resolutions of October 5th, 2015 and October 17th, 2015, and the reissuance approval resolution of June 18th, 2018, conditional upon receipt of site plan approval by the planning board. With respect to the application for site plan approval, approves the application for reissue of the prior approval inclusive of the site plan as described in the approval resolutions of October 5th, 2015, October 17th, 2015, and the reissuance approval resolution of June 18th, 2018. Authorizes the planning board chair to add this resolution to the Grassmere file, accepting previously submitted plans and application materials in lieu of submitting a new site plan documents. Upon the applicant's satisfaction of the below conditions and/or requirements within 6 calendar months of the adoption of this resolution. Payment of any outstanding fees and/or reimbursable amounts due to the town of Rhinebeck related to the review and processing of the application subject of this resolution. Could I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
I will poll the board. Kathy?
Aye.
Woody?
All right,
Aaron?
Aye.
Edna? Sharon?
Aye.
Melody?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Whew. 2 days to go.
Yeah. I was worried about the weather.
So was I. So was I. All right. Our next public hearing, Cheryl Reese, 336 Route 308, site plan and special use permit to construct a garage in front of the house.
Hi, I'm Sherry Monaco, I'm with Bay Horse. Miss Parisi is working down the road, so if we need her, I'm happy to reach out to her. Cheryl would like to add a 20 by 20 garage. What you don't see on this site plan is that the slope of the property has a cliff right along here to Linsman Kill. So there's really no other option for placing a garage on the property. And similar to the other properties along 308, the garages sit in front of the house. So Cheryl's looking for approval to place it in front of the house. Cycles.
I know it happened a while, who did the site visit for this particular project?
Ages ago.
It's been open for a long time. I wasn't with Bay Horse when you did it.
Yeah.
Do you have any comments you'd like to?
no, the only thing I would say, just on the site plan, it would have been nice if we just showed where the stream goes through, because there's a significant drop off the edge. It's
I
a
asked for
cliff.
that also, and they attempted to place the dotted line, but they placed the dotted line about here, and as a child, I waded that stream, so I knew that line was wrong, and the house is built on the cliff. And the property owner didn't get a chance to really place exactly where it was.
There was
So
absolutely
it was hard to do the topography.
no place else that garage could go unless it was in the middle of 308. It's as simple as that.
That would not be acceptable.
No.
Any questions, comments from members of the planning board? Anything from the public? Any questions or comments?
One comment I would make is that going forward, because this is a part of the record, you're describing the steep drop-off in both locations. It would really be important in the future to see that detailed on here, because it doesn't read that way. When you look at this, you really could imagine.
You look like the lot and
It
there's,
looks like there's plenty of room, so I think you're doing yourself a disservice by not making it very evident.
What would probably be helpful is on the final plan, site plan that you submit for me to stamp and sign, if you could have them put some topography on there.
I can, I just went through getting him to take off the line in the mountain face so that I would have them all here for tonight and hopefully be done and get Miss Grace started. She's been waiting for this since February 2018.
So,
Just saying in the final site plan.
right, just in the final site plan.
Okay, I don't think it's holding.
It's not going to hold anything up tonight, but just so for me to stamp and sign, because then you will have that, because you may get someone coming and questioning, or think you should do something else on the property. This could be confusing. It could be difficult. Anything else from the board or the public? Could I hear a motion to close the public hearing? Second? All in favor? Very good, thank you. I have a draft approval resolution. The Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board hereby acts as follows in the application by Cheryl Reese for site plan approval and a special use permit in Town Code Chapter 125 within the RC5 Rural Countryside Zoning District. Reaffirms the proposed action is type 2 under seeker for which coordinated environmental quality review is precluded. Based upon review of submitted information, including reports from the planning board members and the CAB members on their site visit to the project property, finds the proposed work is consistent with the objectives stated in Chapter 125. Conditions of this resolution upon receipt of required approvals are for area variances from the zoning board of appeals. I believe those have been granted, haven't they? Or are those still pending?
The next meeting is the 18th when they close the public hearing and everything was just so.
Okay, so we're going to condition this resolution upon the receipt of those required approvals. Once you have those,
Yeah.
I'd be in a position to stamp and sign.
Wonderful.
Okay. With respect to the application of special use permit to authorize work, finds the proposed work and intended use to be consistent with the general standards of special use permits set forth in Chapter 125. grants the requested special use permit conditional upon receipt of the site plan approval by the planning board. With respect to the application for site plan approval, finds the proposed work and intended use to be consistent with the Town Code, Chapter 125, and approves the application inclusive of the application materials and plan sheets by William P. Grenier, Architect, PLLC, dated July 19, 2019, and August 30, 2019. Authorizes the planning board chair to stamp and sign the above cited site plan upon the applicant's satisfaction of below conditions and/or requirements within 6 calendar months of the adoption of this resolution. Submission of the above cited site plan in the form and numbers specified within Code Chapter 125, except as may be modified by the chair in consideration of filing and distribution requirements. Receipt of the variance approvals from the ZBA. Payment of any outstanding fees and reimbursable amounts due to the town of Rhinebeck related to the review and processing of this application, and receipt of all approvals, authorizations, or certifications required herein or from any other town, county, state, or other agencies such as New York State DOT. I think we're okay with them, as required to undertake the proposed actions. Could I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second. Thank you. Poll the board. Eric?
Aye.
Edna? Sharon?
Aye.
Melody?
Aye.
Kathy? Woody?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So as soon as you get the variances and you get the plan with the topography and the stream on it, bring them in so I can snap and sign.
Does it have to be full topography, or will it dotted lines with a glyph
Just-
designating where that drop off is?
Just, do the best you can.
In theory, there should be shown on a site plan the elevations as the elevations drop.
Generally in 5-foot
That's almost a
sections.
straight line down behind that house.
Yeah.
So that ought to be quite simple.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're very welcome. Okay, our final public hearing tonight is Judith Delberg, 15 Hackney Hill Road, site plan and special use permit, convert garage to accessory. It's not 7:15? No? Oh, we're going to wait.
Why should we have it fun?
Yeah. If Darren's quick, we can go to new business.
So what's that?
Yeah. Yeah. Darren? Be quick. This is,
Take it as a blessing.
I guess I can
Yeah.
stop here very quickly.
Usually it's way down the end of the day.
this way you get, this is for a site plan.
It's a Christmas present.
And sign renovation. All right.
Is that Larry, or is that just me? Yeah.
This is,
Oh, that's Larry, okay. I think that's probably, all we need.
there's a laser pointer on the little note there for me, it's a little red button there.
Okay.
All right, so 6822 Route 9, this is the parcel just south of Pet Country on Route 9. Formerly a Costco oil terminal, and now being proposed for conversion to professional office. More specifically, the existing 990 square foot building is being proposed to be converted to a professional office. This building is currently classified as an accessory to an oil terminal. So although they did office-related tasks in this building, it was an accessory to an oil terminal and not a standalone professional office, which is one of the reasons we come here tonight. The other reason is because we're proposing to add approximately 660 square feet to that building. And the last reason is because we're proposing a 12 square foot directional sign in front of the building, which poses a couple of other challenges, which I'll get to in a minute. But just by way of background, very quickly, the site is 2.34 acres in size. And what we're talking about primarily beyond the reuse of the building is eliminating a lot of what's on the site today. So what you see when you drive by there is quite a bit of steel fence. In fact, there is 450 linear feet, or there are 450 linear feet of steel fence on the site that we're proposing to remove, most of it with barbed wire on the top. And then the other part of our proposal is that we're talking about eliminating about 20,000 square feet of asphalt, existing asphalt on the site, and returning it to be pervious surface. So when you look at this plan, The darker areas are what we're intending to use, a little bit here at this entrance and a parking area here. And the lighter areas, the lighter gray, are being proposed to turn back to stone, essentially. So we're going to pick up the asphalt in those areas. And then the darkest green is the tree line, which is all staying 100% intact. There's no proposal to do anything with that. This is a very large oak tree here, which is staying intact. And then the lawn areas, the lighter green, are largely what you see today, if not larger than what you see today. So it's really a process of eliminating a lot of what's on the site and just occupying this building officially and adding to it. We are also in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals, or soon will be in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals, for the sign that I mentioned a little bit earlier. And the reason for that is because the only place in our minds to put that sign is in front of the building. And such signs are not allowed to be closer than 20 feet from the edge of the pavement. And in our case, because the building is so close to the road, we really have no choice other than to put it closer than 20 feet from the edge of pavement. And there was a question that came up at our pre-application conference I just wanted to address quickly, and that was related to site distances, both from the driveways and due to the sign being in that location. And we've confirmed that there's at least 1,500 feet of visibility in both directions, whether the sign's there or not. So the sign's not impacting any kind of sight lines, as shown on the plan.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are the three new structures, are those repurposed shipping containers?
Most likely.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, yeah, that's the intent. If not, they'll be the exact same proportions, just constructed. But it seems like that's a good feasible option for what we're trying to do there.
And what is the purpose of those?
More office space.
Office space?
Yeah, yeah. So it would all be just.
They're going to be in this whole complex.
Not many. I mean, the building, there's like literally one private office here, and then there's a couple of cubicles across the back. And then this is really designed to be a little bit of storage, a little bit of conference room space, and maybe 2 additional private offices.
And they will look like shipping containers?
Not necessarily. The proposal is to keep the metal roof on this building, to clad this building in wood siding, which would be sort of a light wood stain. And then with the shipping container additions here, the proposal would be to paint them so they read as metal siding. And there's also a little subtle detail here, there and there. Those 2 fine lines are actually little cedar fences, little cedar enclosures which connect the building. But what they're doing is shielding mechanicals here, and in this area, that's where we would put trash and receive deliveries and things. So it's going to read as sort of 3 different materials. You'll have the lighter wood on the main building. You'll have what appears to be darker stained cedar or eBay fencing, possibly mahogany, that does a better job of it. And then these would read as metal siding.
So these are offices for rent?
Offices and conference rooms. For what?
In general, for rent forever?
For us, no, they're for our business. So we run a design build company, so this would be, our professional offices, meeting spaces, spaces to store samples of material, files, and we get quite a bit of delivery in terms of light fixtures and plumbing fixtures and things like that. So to have a place to stage those types of things that we don't currently have now.
And what is
So this is sort of flipped around from where it was before, but this is the only existing private office in the current structure, which is here. As I mentioned, there's some cubicles along this side. And then you pass through and there'd be some additional desks, conference space and workspace. And right now we're toying with the idea of making that a private office, so.
Where's the storage?
In these rooms, you basically have, filing cabinets around the edge. This is like a work table, so.
Yeah, but you're talking about deliveries for building material.
Yeah, they go out to the site. So like things that come in that get opened up, checked out, piled up on the table for a few days till they're needed.
So it's not really a storage area.
No, storage for the, day-to-day storage for the use of our business.
Why do you have this stagger?
Just for that. I mean, it's a design thing. It also allows us to have some additional windows.
What's the purpose for maintaining the second floor?
I'm sorry?
What's the purpose of maintaining the second pullout off of Route 9?
Optionality for the future. Also, actually, it's pretty convenient for us as we come in and out, and we found that when UPS and FedEx comes, it's convenient for them as well.
So if you got storage stuff, where are you coming in with that?
It's storage that comes in by FedEx and UPS, you know, or pickup truck or something. Storage is not like tractor trailers
So it won't
to
be,
deliver materials or
it would
anything.
just be hand carried?
Yeah, it's not like equipment yard, it's not building materials. It's strictly just, you know, light fixtures, things that are ordered on the internet or shipped to us.
And what's the nature of the, after all the oil being stored on that property?
There was a cleanup done, yeah, there was a cleanup done by the prior owner before we took ownership. So one of the contingencies in our deal was that they had a spill closure from the DEC. So that was a contingency of our sale. They did produce that prior to our closing, and they are, in fact, forever liable in the eyes of the DEC for anything to do with the former oil contamination of a portion of the site. There was one area about in this general area, there used to be another building here, and that's largely where the tank farm was. So the contamination went about 12 inches into the ground. It was largely topsoil contamination. They excavated it out, they monitored it for the DEC, and then the DEC successfully signed off on it.
And is there a well on the property, and is that water?
There's a water well on the property. I think it's just cut off, but it's sort of way back here on the tree line.
And that water was not contaminated by the?
It was not. There is a restriction that we don't use that water for drinking. So we can use it, you know, for toilets and such and hand washing, but we don't use it for drinking. And there's also a restriction in the deed that doesn't allow us to use this site for any type of residential or educational use. So we couldn't put a hotel there or a school or anything like
I have a question. Is there any landscaping plan or possible along the road?
that. There is, I mean, there's some subtle ground cover shown here around the building. The issue really is, you know, there's quite a bit of a complex drainage system that happens there, and the buildings, there's a bit of a drainage situation that happens there, where there's a little bit of a swale that catches water. So, you know, our intention is to put some low ground covers here, and of course plant all of these birch trees in this row. But, you know, this area is a little bit harder to landscape given, you know, the swale we have there and the amount of standing water that accumulates and then dissipates over time. Plus there's some underground drainage pipe and things like that. So we hadn't really thought much about putting a lot in the way of landscaping there. And then also I know the DOT's not going to be a big fan of putting large trees and things that close to the roadway. But the intent would be to really clean up the building and make it much prettier. Most likely keep the existing window coverings.
Speaking of DOT, I assume that you checked with them and they have approved both of these curb cuts.
They have. So we've discussed the site. We've walked it. Their big concern was that there were actual curbs here, and there are in fact curbs there. So that was the main thing. And they also were, you know, wanting that the road had the widening out effect at each end, which was done by Costco prior to our ownership. So they were happy to see both of those things in place.
Do you have a sign-off letter from them? We can get a copy.
I can get it from John. Yeah, we met on site, so I have to get a letter from him.
I'm a little concerned with the shipping, with the trailer boxes. That's the gateway to the town of Rhinebeck, to the village of Rhinebeck. Do we really want to see 3 trailers glued together and behind the building?
Well, I don't think they're going to read like that once there's windows in them and they're uniformly clad.
It does look like it though. I mean, you don't have windows in all of them, and it might help me to understand it if I saw the trees in front of it, but it doesn't, I gotta say, it doesn't excite me.
Yeah, Roger's a little bit flat. I think it's a lot better than you're seeing here. Let me see if we can play with it and sort of.
Well, it gives it an industrial look, and I'm not sure that that's what the town of Rhinebeck needs at this juncture.
It's really, when you're driving north, Derek, I mean, the site is so visible. I mean, really, you can look right in there, and I'd like to see something that.
Well, what you're missing here are the line of birch trees. So these birch trees are designed to sort of create a row that shields that side of the building.
Well, maybe it would help if I saw that.
Yeah, so we could
But,
write it in
you know, I'm looking for a roof line that I'm not seeing, I mean, I'm seeing a flat roof. And I was looking for something that carried through that read in some way, had something that read like the original building.
Yeah, the original building's a little tough with the existing roof lines and how low they are, so adding to it gets a little bit, we played around with it quite a bit. It gets
Well, you're
pretty
very
ugly.
creative, see what you can come up with.
Play with it.
I think there's, I agree with Woody, there's something to be added there that,
Did you say those containers are clad?
Well, they're steel to begin with, so they would all be painted the same
Oh,
color.
just painted?
Yeah, so they would read as one continuous
Not possible
map.
to put some cladding on those to blend with the rest of the structure?
We could. I think part of what's interesting about it is that you have these sort of two components to the building, so this being very natural wood clad, and then just carrying the metal through to this section. Blue is not necessarily the intended color, but it's shown for contrast. But let us play around with it. We can come back to something a little bit stronger in terms of the presentation.
I think if you could hide the image of, you could still structurally use those components, but if you could hide the image of what those components are, I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, we'll play around with it.
Three big trees.
There's quite a bit going on with the building as it is, so it's hard to, not add to it
Structurally, they're
without
great
making
for
it
you guys,
great.
they last forever. And
Yeah, no, they're great.
expensive, you bring them in, you drop them down, but the last thing we need is it to either look like containers or trailers. And as a designer, you ought to be able to make that disappear.
Yeah, understood. I mean, our agenda is the same. I mean, we can, a good portion of our work in this town, so we're not looking to put something that's an eyesore out here. So let us play with showing us something that matter needs a little better.
I think that would be good. They look temporary. I think that's what bothers me.
Yeah. No, I get it. I see what you're reacting to, and I think we can fix it.
Other questions? Yes.
So you have DOT approval on the driveway, which is good, as we asked about.
Yeah, well, I'll bring you a letter, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I'd prefer to see, one driveway as a transportation planner, or one of them maybe be right in, right out versus two in such close proximity. I mean, it is a small office, I understand that. But if something
And
does.
they are existing. Yeah.
Right, if something does happen in the future where the intensity increases, we might want to, if that were to change, we probably want to talk about that if you were to come in for another site plan. A few specific questions that I had related to what you had proposed. The wall lighting appeared to be uplighting, based on what I looked at, and that's not allowed by town code. That has to be downlighting.
No, it's actually on the building today. It's not uplighting, but it might have essentially wrong.
It looked like it was shining up from down below, but any lighting, just make sure it conforms to the code. We don't have uplighting. Two others. No, actually, one other big one. So one thing I'd like you to take a look at, that I took a look at, and I still need to do a little bit of review on it, but it appears, based on my review of the sign code, that your square footage area of the sign exceeds what the code permits, based on the uses. So take a look at.
Not 12?
Well, the code is 12, but you have two sides, and each side counts, each face would count. So you have the two signs for your business, and then you have the two for potential additional business. I think the total square footage exceeds what's permitted by code.
Okay.
So take a look and see if you agree, and if we have an issue, we can kind of figure that out.
Okay.
The way that I look at it, I think you're exceeding the 12 square feet based on your post. That's because you have the two faces on either side of the posts.
Is there a provision that in the law about dual-sided signs at all?
You can't have more than two primary signs per establishment, which you're fine with, but you kind of have the double facing sign.
Right.
So I don't know if it's entirely clear. You can't exceed 12 square feet based on section 12537. However, when there are two or more wholly independent owned businesses or activities, one directory sign not to exceed 16 square feet may also be allowed. So I'm not entirely sure.
Classified as a
Because it's double sided. So take a look at that, because I don't want to have that come back later on, just make sure we're all in agreement on what the requirements are for the sign. That was, I think, my big issue. Good question.
Any other questions? Okay, I have a procedural resolution. Excuse me. The Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board hereby acts as follows in the application by Darren DeVisit for site plan approval and a sign code under Town Code Chapter 125 for reuse and modification of the existing structure at 6822 Route 9 within the CDS Commercial Business South Zoning District. accepts the application and supporting documents as adequate for initial review by the planning board, its advisors, and the public, classifies the proposed action as type 2 under seeker, which coordinated environmental quality review is precluded, schedules a public hearing on the application for February 3rd at 6:35, and directs the clerk to undertake or otherwise cause noticing and posting thereof in accordance with the court requirements set forth under Town Code, Chapter 125, Section 12572, and 37. Delegates planning board members. Thank you. To conduct a field visit to the project site and report their observations at the time of public hearing. In accordance with Common Code Chapter 9, Conservation Advisory Board, refers the application to the Conservation Advisory Board for review and written comment concerning environmental factors. In accordance with the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development, 239 Planning Zoning Referral, refers the application to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development for review. Refers the application to the New York State Department of Planning, Department of Transportation for comments related to ingress and egress along Route 9. Authorizes without prejudice to the information or comment that may be presented at the public hearing or may arise based on both the above cited field visit and referrals. Preparation of a working draft of an approval resolution for the planning board's consideration on February 3rd or as may be later timed. Could I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second.
Second.
All in favor? Very good. So you want to get in touch with Melody and Edna about the site visit?
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. We have one more public hearing. Judith Dahlberg, 15 Haggerty Hill Road, site plan and special use permit, convert garage to accessory. And there are a few things I'd like to say before we go into this public hearing. There's been some confusion about the role of the planning board and the role of the zoning board of appeals. The zoning board of appeals is the only board capable of making any determinations about variances. The planning board has no control over that. I know that for this particular application, there are a number of variance requests for the planning board. They're meeting on this Wednesday night. Those variances would need to be granted for the planning board to go forward with this application. Secondly, any issues dealing with septic systems and potable water are dealt with by the Dutchess County Department of Health. The town of Rhinebeck does not have a sanitary code, and therefore we are not authorized or in position to make determinations of the adequacy or inadequacy of potable water systems or sewage disposal systems. And I believe that the Dutchess County Health Department has been working with the engineer from Ms. Dahlberg to determine whether or not the existing facilities are adequate for what she chooses to do, what modifications, if any, can be made, if they need to be made, to permit that to go forward. The planning board will be waiting to hear from the Dutchess County Health Department on that matter before we can make any other determination of this project. It's also important to recognize that the planning board can only deal with what is in an application before us. We cannot take into consideration what future use might be made of a property, as that's purely hypothetical. We cannot say such things as, can this person rent this out as a Airbnb, short-term rental, something along those lines. At the present time, short-term rentals are not allowed in the town or village of Rhinebeck, well, in the village they now in the town of Rhinebeck. It's our understanding that there are between 100 and 120 Airbnbs available at any given time between the town and village of Rhinebeck at this time. The town board is working on a set of regulations to govern the use of Airbnbs, how they function, where they function, and what standards they must meet. So at this time, any consideration by the planning board is going to be taking into consideration what the health department has to say and what the zoning board of appeals has to say and what our zoning law says with relationship to accessory structures, accessory dwellings on private property. I think it's also worth noting that on this particular property, what is happening is being suggested is an existing accessory dwelling unit, one-bedroom dwelling unit in the primary residence would be moved into the garage. The existing accessory dwelling unit in the primary residence as part of the condition of approval and as part of any condition for getting a certificate of occupancy will have to be totally dismantled and removed from the primary house. Therefore, there is no additional density of use on this property if this were to go forward, and there is no additional considerations of additional septic requirements beyond what is necessary to permit the garage accessory structure, if so approved, to function. And that's going to be up to the Dutchess County Health Department. There is a lot of, I understand, discussion which was not germane to the issue before the planning board about personal issues, personal concerns, personal things of that sort. As long as they relate specifically to what is our required position as a planning board under the law, as written by the town board of Rhinebeck, dealing with accessory structures, accessory dwelling units, either detached or within the primary structure. Those are the comments we want to hear about. Things beyond that, we have no control over it. We are not a legislative body, we cannot change the law. We are not a quasi-judicial body. We cannot give variances, we cannot give relief, we cannot alter the law in any way, shape, or form. We are constrained to administer the law as written, and that's what we plan to do. So, at this point, I'll open the public hearing. Are there any comments from members of the planning board first, or questions? Oh, yes, Edna has recused herself? Sorry, Edna, yes. All right, members of the public, if there are comments you wish to make, we will be continuing this public hearing until February 3rd. And so any new comments will be most welcome. Please keep them to the project that's before us, to the concerns that the planning board has to take into consideration, and to the guidelines we have to follow in reviewing and approving or disapproving a project. And please come up to the microphone and identify yourself.
Good evening, Planning Board. My name is Chris Green. I spoke at the last hearing on this application. As you may remember, I live at 11 Haggerty Hill Road, which is next door to 15 Haggerty Hill Road, the property that's the subject of the application. I would like to make a few comments on my behalf and on behalf of my neighbors on Haggerty Hill Road who share my concerns about this application. Some of the neighbors who have contributed to these comments are here tonight. Others could not be here tonight. And it is essentially the same group of people who signed the letter that I provided to the planning board at the last hearing. I don't typically like to read from documents when I'm addressing august bodies such as yours in public, but because this set of comments is constructed by a group of people that are interested in it, and I want to be accurate in reflecting their interests, I hope you'll indulge me if I just read the comments. I believe that most, or at least as far as I understand, most of the neighbors have agreed that we're not going to repeat the same things we said tonight at the last meeting, and I'm sure you appreciate that, in the interest of respecting your time and keeping the comments brief. But I'd like to talk for a few minutes about something that I don't believe has yet been discussed by the board or the public, and I think it is within the scope of your opening statement, Mr. Trimble, and that is the detrimental impact on perceived density and on rural character if detached accessory dwellings like this one are improperly sited. We've done some analysis of properties on our road using the Dutchess County parcel access. I'm not going to go through all that data, but I am prepared to provide the board with copies of the data so you can be assured that the few statistics I'm going to cite are in fact reliable. So I have a printed copy of an Excel file. It should have sufficient copies for all the board members to have it. And it's about the properties that are on Haggerty Hill Road. Haggerty Hill Road might be, I think, one of the shortest roads in Rhinebeck. It runs from Route 9 to the intersection with Primrose Hill Road. According to parcel access, there are just 34 properties with addresses on the road. 9 of those properties, over 25%, are no larger than 1.5 acres, the size of the Dulwood property. But as you walk or drive up our road, it still has the feeling of a tree-lined rural countryside, in keeping with the goals of the comprehensive plan and the zoning law for our district. The reason the road retains that character is that on the road there are 11 additional properties, 32% of the properties on the road, that are between 5 and 262 acres in size. As a result, and you'll see this on the Excel file summary at the bottom, the average size of properties on our road is over 12 acres. These larger properties intersperse the smaller properties, and in addition to that, most of the houses on the road are set back from the road and are well screened by woodlands and ridges. We, the neighbors, treasure the rural character of the road and want to preserve it for the future. There are a handful of garages or sheds set close to the road in our neighborhood, but most all of those are one-story small buildings. None are dwellings, and none look like dwellings. The garage at 15 Haggerty Hill is by far the largest and highest of these roadside structures. But right now, at least, it looks like and is used as, to the extent it is used, it's used as a garage rather than as a house with an attached garage. Establishing it as a house or residence would be an extreme departure in our view from the current character of our neighborhood. There are no other houses so close to the road. There are no other properties with two houses set on 1.5 acres. The result would be the appearance of 3/4 acre zoning, a density more appropriate to the village, where central water and sewerage are available, than to our RC5 district, where each property must have a private well and septic system. Furthermore, approval of the pending application would set the stage for other small properties to build dwellings close to the road, if the location of the house and septic field leave no other space available. It has been suggested that a dwelling in the Dahlberg garage would not intensify the use of that building. That can't be right. When people live in a house, it gets much more use than a garage does when cars sit in it. People in a house also flush more liquid and waste into the earth than cars do in a garage. So granting this application, in our view, would greatly intensify the use of that building. It has been also suggested that removing one of the garage doors and replacing it with a residential door and perhaps windows would make the building more attractive. It will surely make it look more like a house, which is precisely what the neighbors are concerned about. We don't want the building to look like or be used as a house with an attached garage. We ask the board, with all due respect, to consider why the town requires a special permit for an accessory dwelling, and why the section on accessory dwellings in the zoning law restates the lot size, lot width, and setback requirements that are already stated elsewhere in the law. The reason, we believe, is that accessory dwellings affect density, both actual density and perceived density. The zoning law seeks to do two things, as we understand it. First, to control actual density, and second, to reduce the appearance of increased density in order to maintain the rural character of districts in our town. Accessory dwellings within the primary house have little effect on apparent density or perceived density. It is detached dwellings that can threaten the character of neighborhoods by being installed on lots that are too narrow to separate them from neighbors, by being sited in front of primary dwellings, and by being set too close to the road, thereby constituting an obvious departure from the density requirements of the district. That's why the proper siting of detached dwellings is crucial. It's the planning board's job, we believe, to make sure detached dwellings don't become blatant contradictions to the density goals of rural districts. As the zoning law states in the section on special permits, the planning board's job is, quote, to ensure that the development and use of individual parcels is in harmony with the zoning law and will not have an adverse effect on adjacent lands, the immediate neighborhood, or on the character of the community, end quote. Not every application for a detached accessory dwelling deserves to be approved. If everyone did, there would be no requirement for these dwellings to have special permits. All of us who live on Haggerty Hill Road have made significant investments in our properties. According to Parcel Access, the median full market value of the 34 properties on our road is $458,000. These investments have been made with the understanding that our neighborhood will continue to be and will continue to look like a rural countryside area. Each investment, would you like a minute or should I continue?
No, y'all go ahead.
Okay. Each investment has been an act of faith that the town will enforce zoning regulations, that the planning board will work to maintain the integrity of our rural district by being careful and conservative in granting permits. The proposed accessory dwelling would have an immediate detrimental effect on Haggerty Hill Road and would establish a precedent for future similar development that would destroy or could destroy the character of our neighborhood. The house that exists at 15 Haggerty Hill Road contains 2,445 square feet with 560 square feet on the second floor. We believe there is ample space within that house to meet the needs of its new owners, including by maintaining the accessory dwelling that currently exists in that house. For the reasons that I've discussed and the reasons that we spoke about at the prior hearings, we respectfully ask you to protect our neighborhood by denying this application. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any, but I'm certain there probably aren't. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
If the public comment period is going to be carried over, and I understand you to say that it's going to be carried over until mid-February, is that correct?
It's going to be carried over until January 6th.
To January 6th,
And
okay.
it may well be carried over beyond that.
Okay, fine, okay. On the assumption that the public comment period was going to be carried over, I wasn't planning on saying anything tonight. But Michael, you said something earlier that I've got to follow up on. And that is that the planning board cannot consider hypotheticals. And you stated that in a way that it was not a matter of policy, but a matter of law. Can you say more about what you said? Because it seems to invalidate so many of the discussions that we had on Rockledge, where the whole short-term rental issue was an issue of potentiality, not actuality. And in all the conversations that we've had on that, no one has ever said to me, gee, you can't talk about that, we can't consider it on the planning board because it's a hypothetical. So I don't understand the thrust of what you said.
In this instance, it's not simply a hypothetical. Since it is not a listed use of short-term rental, it is prohibited in the town of Rhinebeck. So the planning board has no opportunity to consider it for approval, obviously, because it's a prohibited use. And saying that someone...
If it were enforced, et cetera, I mean, there's
Well,
a
that's what
reality.
the town board is working on right now, regulations to do precisely that. To identify where they are, to register them, to have them to go fire inspections, there are a number of different things that will be done to try and bring this under control. Clearly, it's become obviously a very large concern in many areas. But it's not something that the planning board can take into consideration in determining whether or not to approve an accessory dwelling unit, which is legal in the town of Rhinebeck, if it meets the certain requirements that are listed in the zoning law. For example, the Zoning Board of Appeals is looking at those dimensional requirements. If the Zoning Board of Appeals decides to grant those variances, then from the planning board standpoint, it would then meet the necessary area constraints for us to approve that particular application. We can't second guess the Zoning Board of Appeals. That's in their ballpark, and we have to go with what they say. The same is true of the health department's regulations in terms of wells and septic systems. We have to go with what they say. If they say it can happen here, and this is how it will happen, and if the applicant agrees to do that, then we cannot say, well, water and septic obviously are inadequate here, because we don't have the authority to do that. We don't have a sanitary code in the town, the planning board can't do that. We depend upon the health department. So we then look at the actual zoning law. What does it have to say about accessory dwelling units in primary structures, accessory dwelling units in detached structures? And those guidelines and those constraints are what we have to take into consideration when making a determination whether that is an approvable or disapprovable application. We can't say whether or not they might decide to open some sort of maybe a garage of some sort if someone owned it and wanted to actually work on cars in there for pay. That's illegal in a residential district. They can't do that. That's not something you would take into consideration when someone builds a 5-car garage, which someone might logically think, well, perhaps this person is going to have a little, sideline business in there. But that's not something that we could take into consideration for someone wishing to build a garage of that size. That's what I meant by that remark.
So if in this case, a member of the public points out that this accessory dwelling, which is being implausibly built as a 1-bedroom dwelling, could, with minimal effort, be turned into a 3-bedroom, 2 full bath house, this is something that the planning board could not take into consideration because it's a hypothetical?
No, you couldn't. That's not what's before us, and that's not what the building permit would allow. If they were to do that without a building permit, they would also not have health department approval, they'd be in violation of the sanitary code, they'd be in violation of the New York State building code, they'd be in violation of our zoning law. Those are enforcement issues, and I grant you, enforcement is very difficult. It's not easy. But no, we just have someone tonight who had a presentation, he's building a 5,000+ square foot house, and there'll be 3 bedrooms in that house. So we could say, well, no, we're going to turn it down because obviously you must have some other idea for using it. That's not our right to do that. They are allowed to apply to us, to build that. We go by what they say. We do have inspections during the building process. And if it turns out that someone is doing something that they should not have done in there, then yes, it becomes an enforcement issue.
And is that a matter of law or policy?
It's a matter of law. You cannot, if someone is applying for A, you can't decide that we're going to turn it down because it might be a C. You base it on what does A require, what are the requirements, the constraints, what are the regulations for that. And if they meet all those regulations, legally, I don't see the basis, the right that we have to turn it down.
So if the Board of Health took the same view and didn't look at potentialities, they would say, gee, this applicant says it's 1 bedroom, and therefore, if somebody comes up with a septic scheme that will service 1 bedroom, but not 2, and certainly not 3, their hands are tied.
No, their hands aren't tied. They would approve it, and if you suddenly see 2 or 3 bedrooms in there, then that would be a violation. That's an enforcement issue.
I mean, all of the hard issues are being thrown on the weakest link in the chain, and that's enforcement.
At this point, very often for communities such as ours, that is difficult. It's the same sort of thing. A guy buys a Ferrari, he'll do 20 miles an hour. You want to not sell that car in the town of Rhinebeck because we don't have a speed limit that allows that. 55 is the highest speed limit. You can't do that either. That's going to
Ferraris will also do 35 miles an hour. Okay,
yes, but the
it's a
person
matter
who
of
buys
use.
this is not going to go 35 miles an hour. I'm sorry, but this is the way that the law works. Enforcement has always been the most difficult thing to do because you can't go on private property without a warrant, for example, if you suspect something wrong. You do depend upon the members of the community. If they see something, say something to let people know so we can then go and investigate and enforce. The town of Rhinebeck is rich with apartments and other type of detached dwelling units that we never saw a building inspector and never saw a building permit. And they generally come before us when people come to try and rectify that when they go to sell the house and they're advertising what was known to be a 2-bedroom house as a 5-bedroom house with a guest cottage, and all of a sudden they realize that that's illegal, the health department realizes that's illegal, and they suddenly have some serious problems to deal with. Enforcement is not easy, and it is difficult, and it always has been, and I imagine it always will be, because the cost to do anything to such a thorough extent would not sit well with taxpayers, I'm sure. But it is up to neighbors. You see things going on, you see extra cars there, things like that. You bring it to the attention of the zoning enforcement officer, and that's when something can start to look into.
I mean, it seems that the way the whole special permit section of the zoning law was written allows the planning board substantial latitude in imposing special conditions
That's
to
correct.
evaluate potentialities. And as a result, I was very surprised by your statement that you were essentially disbarred from considering potentialities in the specific case of the Dolberg application.
Potentialities in terms of potential future use for a property.
Okay. I'm enlightened but discouraged.
Well, if you look at the site plans, chapter 8-7 of our zoning law, it lists all of the different requirements for site plan that have to be addressed. Use is not one of them. That's a separate chapter of the zoning law. Yes.
My name is Edna Lockman. I live at 20 Hagerty Hill Road. Two things. One, I would like to say that I very much agree with what Chris Green said, that I do think it is part of the job and within the province of the planning board to distinguish between accessory dwellings in a primary house and detached dwellings. I think that their impact on neighborhoods and the environment are very different. So that's one. The other is, I heard the comment about the planning board has nothing to do with public health approval, etc. But what if an applicant is saying something to the planning board that on its face simply cannot be true? Which is, there will be only 2 bedrooms on this property. The current accessory dwelling in the house, as I understand it, because I've looked at the plans of the house, take up the entire length of the house on one side. It's a very large room. In 2003, there was a building permit and approval for a 3-bedroom house, which was then apparently reduced to 2 bedrooms when this accessory dwelling was installed, the kitchen was installed and so forth. So now that is going to be supposedly taken apart, and that area is going to be a playroom for Ms. Dacuna's daughter. And the daughter and the mother are going to sleep in the same room until the daughter goes away to college. Then in the garage, there are these 2 rooms downstairs, and only one of them will be used as a bedroom, and Judy will sleep in the same room with her sister who's ill, even though there is an identical room right next door, the same size, and a beautiful bedroom upstairs with a vaulted ceiling that previously has been used as a guest bedroom. So what is the planning board to do in a case like this? I mean, if an applicant says something, we have to accept it. That doesn't make sense to me when it's obviously not true.
The applicant does, as you know, sign a certification that is notarized saying that the information that they're providing the planning board, to the best of their knowledge, is indeed accurate.
But you see, this, I'm quite sure that this only 2 bedrooms on the property has to do with the septic system, right? I mean, there's something wrong about this. I'm not sure if it's wrong on the part of the planning board or wrong on the part of the Department of Health, but this is simply wrong.
Well, that's something that's going to have to be verified and proven. We can't just make assumptions that what someone is telling us is a lie, which is basically what you're suggesting we do. That's not something that I believe we are entitled to do. And I think that if someone signs a certification saying that what they're saying to the best of their knowledge is true, I think we need to take them at their word. I also think that we need to wait for the health department, which is going to be inspecting the system there to see exactly what it is, what's there, what it's adequate for, what it's capable of being used for. And if indeed what's being proposed can be accommodated on this property from their standpoint and their regulations and their requirements. And we don't have that information, that they have not reviewed the information given to them, to my understanding, and I believe they have not made any site visits that they intend to do as well. So at this point, we're not in a position to say what the septic system is or is not capable of serving, because we don't know. The health department hasn't told us, and that's their job.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Bartolo Coco. I live on 1900 Hill Road. I have here a question to the planning board regarding the law.
I'm sorry, the what?
We established that the neighbor there is RC5, 5 acres for one dwelling, right? When they did create the garage, it started as a small garage, and if you can see, it was a very tiny garage. Now there is a big building. How that it was possible in a 5-acre district?
Simply, it wasn't a 5 acres district at the time.
It was a R3A.
It wasn't a 5 acres district at the time.
Correct, it was R3A.
And beyond that, all I can tell you is that the previous owners of the property who built the garage, did the other improvements on the property, went through the proper building department forms of filing building permits, having inspections, and they have COs for all of that, everything that was done on that property.
No, Mr. Trimble, you were talking about law before, and how the zoning board should make sure that the law is applied. It looks to me, in reality, that it wasn't. And I have also proved that the enforcement and the zoning enforcement officer probably, I don't know, whatever happened there, it wasn't the right thing, and it can be proved legally.
Well, that's something that the planning board obviously cannot deal with. The planning board was not involved in the building permits or in the inspections or the certificates of occupancy, so that's not something that we can adjudicate in any way, shape, or form. If you really feel that there's been something that in those permits being issued and the certificates of occupancy being issued as well, that's probably something to take to the town board as an issue if you feel that that happened improperly. But the planning board, we're not an enforcement, we're strictly an administrative body. And what happened in the past, those are not things that we can deal with, that we can do or undo, anything like that. They're legal documents, and they stand as they are unless they're overturned by an appropriate authority.
So now I have the second question, legal question. This property is on parcel access and so on, your public records is 215, so it's a dwelling with an apartment accessory, correct?
I believe so.
So now I've been reading here, so what the zoning enforcement officer wrote here, that the title of this property, in the title search, he says that the title search at that time listed the property as a multi-family dwelling with a 3-bedroom and 2.5 baths, and found no violation present. A review of our records found no existing violations. What is the difference between a 215 apartment, accessory apartment, and a in the title, multi-family property?
Specifically, multifamily can mean that the structure was designed and built originally to house more than one family. Across the street from me, there is an old farmhouse, and it has been a 2-family farmhouse ever since I moved from across the street 45 years ago. That would be considered 2-family, multifamily. The apartment is generally an accessory use to the single-family dwelling itself. I don't know why on parcel access it's called multifamily. I don't believe that's what our assessor's office has, but I'm not sure.
No, the assessor office, he says that is a multifamily property.
What year was that, what's the date stamp on that document that you're talking about?
You understand my point, I think. because it's already on the title, it's a multifamily, and zoning law is not for a multifamily. And the previous owner sold the house as a multifamily property. I can understand the developer, but I don't understand the town and the law. That's why I'm saying it. This as the date of August 28, 2019.
19,
Yes, this year.
When is that date?
And this
on?
date is from, to the Zoning Board of Appeals, from Michelle Turk, zoning administrator. Date of this is December 9, 2019.
and if you have an issue with the zoning enforcement officer, I suggest you sit down with them.
What do you
Not
mean?
us.
I don't have an issue with anybody. It just, it looks to me that, again, so here, I trust myself. I trust my mind and my soul and my heart. So here, there is something that it doesn't add up, guys.
If indeed the assessor's office has that listed as a multifamily house, they wouldn't need a permit for an accessory dwelling unit. It would already be at least a two-family house at this point. We're treating it here as a single-family residence with an accessory dwelling unit, not as a two-family house.
And that is what in the reality it is, even though the bedroom, what they call storage in the second floor of the garage, for you, it was just a storage, okay? In reality, it was a bedroom. I understand your point, you say we don't have the enforcement thing, it's difficult and so on, but in reality, like everybody states here, the situation is different.
Well, I think the only thing we can do, and this is something to talk to the zoning board of appeals about
I
on
will.
Wednesday, is to look at the assessors, have the assessors records looked at, see
They
how
did.
far back it goes that it's listed as a multifamily house, and see when that happened. We've undergone a series of different zoning laws in this town over the last, since about 1972, when zoning first came in. And different things have been allowed at different times in different areas. There are things that aren't allowed anymore that were allowed under previous zoning laws. So it very much depends on when that initial determination is made by the assessor's office, who generally makes these determinations, and then sets the tax, whatever the tax burden is going to be on that property. Finding out when that was originally done. You have to go back to the records to see exactly when they originally decided it was a multifamily dwelling, and see under what zoning law that happened. I doubt that it happened recently. I don't believe it went under our current zoning law, but I don't know. I've now gone through the assessor's records.
Okay? Thank you.
You
Can I
know,
just clarify one thing?
Oh, sure.
Last month and this month, you referred to parcel access as our information. Just want to clarify that parcel access is put up by the Dutchess County, by the county itself.
Okay.
Information comes through our assessors, but the information on parcel access is known by many people to not always be accurate.
I
So
understand. I know.
I just
That's
didn't
why-
want you to continue to think, you suggested that we were allowing incorrect information to go up, and we're not responsible for what goes up on parcel access. They get information from us, but that's not our tool.
To me, as a citizen, I would have the expectation that being people working and paid for, this parcel access somehow, it should be, I wouldn't say, I understand when there is a little, typo or something, but in this case, the difference was huge. It is huge. So I figured out at this point who I have to trust. I cannot trust parcel access. I cannot trust the zoning enforcement officer because he granted that resolution for a variance. He didn't follow up with what the thing they were. So do I have to leave it with the 2 building and 2 family in 1.5 acres, just very close to me? Is the density, as people say, there's more traffic, is more noise. It's not what the law wants. No, and I understand everybody is trying to shield themselves for something. I want to say, I don't have anything against you, at all. I know that you've not paid for this, and you are doing this for whatever you want to do. But at the same time, I feel like I have to address this thing to somebody. So either you, that's why last time I asked who appoints you and so on, because I'm ignorant on all this. I just came in into this place because of what happened, because I received a certified letter. So I don't have anything against or towards you guys, but I would have, my expectation, it would have been that people would be prepared. And when I saw all these discrepancies, and I saw that there were no answers, or the answers they were like vague, or we'll see, or oh, is another zoning board of appeal that he has to do. I feel like I take the time out of my work to do this. I don't have any gain.
I think the questions that you're asking right now, probably the best area to get that information is down at the assessor's office, since they keep these records, and they're the ones who basically decide what the designation of the property will be. And you can see, and probably on all the different cards that they have, going way back to whenever they first started doing the assessments, you can see when changes were made, when different things were done, when the property tax was altered. You can also see exactly what they've labeled that property as.
It's simple, you give me more work. Because more work I do, and more probably I would be a little, like here, all the chain is not working properly. In business, so this thing, it would have never happened before. It did happen. It's still happening, and we're still going on. So
that's the best thing that you offer, is where that information will be.
You don't have an answer regarding what is the difference between accessory dwelling and multifamily problem.
And that's not specific to what they decided down at the assessor's office, why they decided to use one term rather than single family within accessory dwelling. No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Good night.
Anyone else wish to speak tonight?
Mr. Trimble,
Yes.
if I could, just, I have copies of the comments I gave. I know they're in the electronic record, but those are paper copies.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Yes.
Hi, I'm Michelle Kornhauser. I live at 15 Haggerty Hill Road. Sorry I was late. My son is sick and I had to help with bedtime. Although I missed Chris Green's presentation, I am aware of what was contained in his letter, and I want to state that I agree with what he presented to me. I also I won't reiterate everything that I already presented to you, but I sent a letter in the last time we had a meeting. I still agree with everything I said at that point. And I guess I'm just particularly concerned, if I understand correctly, you're saying that you can't really consider what the future use of the property is going to be. You can only consider what the current owners are stating they're going to do with the property now. Is that
That's
true?
correct, yes.
Okay. But it seems like this is really opening the door for this property to be misused by having too many people on it. And then it's the neighbor's responsibility to report things, so it just seems unfair to the neighbors. I don't want that to be my job. I don't want to have to be calling, every week when I see too many cars across the street. Is that really what is supposed to happen?
At the present time, the town zoning enforcement officer, the building inspector, unless there is an application before the planning board, or there is a building permit issue for the building inspector to do inspections, we don't have the legal right to go on private property and investigate what they're doing. Quite frankly, personally, I don't think we ought to have that right. Private property is exactly that. You're entitled to a sense of privacy.
Yeah.
Residents who live in a community, and Rhinebeck has always been, I think, quite well noted for this. It certainly has been in the 45 years I've been here. It's a community that does look out for one another. If they see something going on, see something wrong, they do report it. They do try to deal with it. And yeah, it's a burden for being part of a community that cares. On my road, I've had hundreds of traffic accidents in front of my house. I've had 4 fatalities. The state police give me flares because they know I'll be the first one out there. It's not pleasant, but it's my community, and so I do it. And I don't think that's too much to expect of other neighbors. They see something, they think something is wrong, they think something is going on.
Sure,
It should be
yeah, and
reported.
it's not that I have a problem contributing to my community, but it just seems to create a situation that's obviously really opening the door to be abused is a different thing than, I don't know,
I
it seems,
understand what you're saying, but we can't make that assumption. That's not fair on our part to make that assumption that what we are being told is not correct. That's just not the role of the planning board. It would be very easy for us, for almost every application that comes before us, to look down the road and say, this could turn into this, it could turn into that, so we're going to turn it down on that basis. You really don't want your planning board to have that authority. You want them to be guided by the zoning law, the requirements of what we are to look at, how we are to consider what we're looking at, and the circumstances in which we either approve or deny an application. We don't want it just to be, well, whatever we feel at this point, or we have a bad feeling about that. We really do not want the planning board to have that authority.
okay. I don't know, it still seems, I mean, even in the current situation, it seems obvious that it's not gonna be used that way, but, I understand that point. Yeah, I guess, I don't know anything else to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak tonight? Okay, could I have a motion to continue this public hearing to the January 6th at 6:35? Second?
So moved.
All in favor? Very good. But also keep in mind, you can always call the Gretchen to ask, has any new information come in? Has the health department reported on anything? Have we heard anything from the ZBA? Is there new information that's been submitted to either the planning board on this or the zoning board of appeals on this? And Gretchen will be more than happy to inform you of whatever we have in the file. It's available for anyone to review.
Michael?
Yes.
If they get all their appeals, and the Board of Health approves the septic system, do we have any grounds at all to reject this?
You mean if the ZBA, gives all the variances, the health department says it's clean? I think then we have to look very closely at the regulations that we have to look at, particularly under...
Which are what?
Well, under site plan review, there's about 3 pages of things we're supposed to look at. The specific requirements for the special use permit for an accessory dwelling in a detached building. There are also requirements there that have to be looked at in terms of parking, doing all sorts of things. We have to look very closely at all of those different factors to see whether or not this application, in addition to having the variances granted, in addition to having the health department approval, if it does meet those requirements, if it can indeed meet those requirements such that it could be approved. Those things alone, no, they do not mean it gets approved. We have a great deal of work still to do about the things that we are supposed to look at and we are supposed to consider, including the comments from the public.
But none of those things have been addressed by the public as yet, is that right?
For the most part, I think they've been addressing concerns, well, yes, with community character, things of that sort. Yeah, I believe they have. Yes, wait. Oh. Would you wish to say anything this evening?
I came to represent Judy because she's actually quite sick. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody is clear on what's going on. We have not asked for anything new that's beyond what's existing on the site. We just are asking for a change of use for certain circumstances that were not foreseen before. And we're really not changing the density or adding people. Suppose Judy or the other lady have a boyfriend or a husband. What happens? What happens then? I mean, there is an increase in the number of people, but you can deny somebody to have a husband or to have a partner of some sort, correct?
We don't get into that.
Understood. So that's what I mean. I mean, she has one sister. The sister is ill. She's in dire straits, and she wanted to help her. She's a nurse.
Okay, well, we will be taking this up again on January 6th.
Absolutely, and I thank you for your time.
Information from the different groups that are also agreeing to this, that we can share and see whether or not this application is going to be the way to go
Absolutely.
forward.
The zoning board came on site, they saw everything, we went over everything with them and showed them, and then we'll see what their comments would be.
We'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
I guess we'll see what the 6th. Yes.
If I may ask one more question. Mr. Rome asked you, what were the specific things that you would look at as a
The
planning
things you
board?
want to see,
And you said,
you want to look at Article 7 of the zoning law, that site plan. Those are the different factors we're supposed to look at for any applications coming before the planning board. And in Article 6, special use permits, I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but it's for accessory dwelling and detached unit. It's one of the first special use permits, and it lists the different things to look at. You'll also see that in that chapter, Chapter 6, there are general standards for granting special use permits. Those are all points that also have to be considered. And they don't relate specifically to either what the ZBA is looking at or what the health department is looking at.
okay, thank you.
Okay, we have one more tonight. Rhinebeck Villas LLC, 9G and Middle Road, site plan special use permit, wetlands permit, and minor subdivision.
Good evening. So I'm here representing Rhinebeck Villas. Excuse me. It's been a while since we were here. I had a sketch discussion about this project with the planning board during the summer. And then we actually made an initial application to the ZBA also. So now we're back in front of the board with a formal application. And the specific application is the project, as stated, is located on the west side of Route 9G. 9G is located here, and then on the, I guess it would be the northwest side of Middle Road. Middle Road is located here. The project has several components to it. The total parcel size is a little more than 30 acres. It's like 30.5 acres. And ultimately, what the applicant would like to do on the property, and as part of this application, is to construct a hotel complex on a portion of the property, and then through subdivision on another portion of the property, have an event space. So the current zoning for this property allows a hotel. Current zoning is gateway. It's Gateway North, and in Gateway North, hotel is an allowed use. However, an event space is not allowed use in that zoning district. So in presenting this board, we're trying to disclose ultimately what the applicant would like to do with the project. So once again, it's hotel complex here, event space. But this particular application considers a subdivision of the property and only dealing with the hotel space on the southern portion of the property. So that's the specific application in front of this board. Obviously, we're going to move forward with the northern portion of the property with application to the Town of Rhinebeck Town Board for rezoning of the property to allow that event space. In addition to this site plan, I also, for the hotel, I also mentioned that application is made to the town zoning board of appeals. Because the criteria that's listed in the zoning code for a hotel, it actually requires a 200-foot setback from New York State Route 9G. Jim, is there a way to zoom in and out on this, or could you? Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah, perfect. As I said before, and it's a section. This is allowed by special permit under the zoning code. In the special permit, it requires a 200-foot setback from Route 9G. Well, what's also located on the property and delineated through here is in this hatched area, there are core wetlands located throughout the property. And in an effort to minimize any of the disturbance to those core wetlands and the associated adjacent areas that the town has under their code, we're proposing to have a 100-foot setback off of Route 9G with the units. So it'll require a 100-foot area variance off of Route 9G, and that's to be considered by the zoning board of appeals. I mentioned that the proposal includes a complex of buildings. So there are a total of 8 units for the hotel complex itself, and then there'll be like an administrative building and some other functions located in a building on the northern portion of that property. Access will be will be from Route 9G, and it's going to be not only for the hotel complex, there's also a access is proposed ultimately for the event space. Design work relative to access off of 9G has taken place. The applicant has retained traffic consultant, Craig Manning, has done an extensive traffic study and has also been in touch with the New York State DOT with regard to access. And so that's an ongoing application at this time. The property will also be served by central water and sewer. So an individual or a central water system will be required to be established for. It'll be established for actually both of the properties. So it'll be public water supply, but it'll be private. The same thing with on-site sewage disposal. It'll be through work has taken place, and we've advanced some information with New York State DEC, and it will be through a wastewater treatment facility with discharge to an existing intermittent stream that actually goes exits through the property. It's sewage. The sewer plant and the water supply are going to be located generally in this area, and then there's an existing, as I mentioned before, there's an intermittent stream that discharges to the south, and the effluent from that wastewater treatment plant will be discharged to that location. In addition to that, I've begun to do initial grading and stormwater design for the project. Everything will be contained on site. There'll be infrastructure established to manage the stormwater per New York State DEC regulations. One of the items that is also going to be developed is ultimately be a landscaping and lighting plan for this project. We're in the process of doing that, but wanted to get the initial application presented to this board and, start the process with circulation to all the, involved and interested agencies with regard to secret determination for this. Also here tonight with me is Rob DuPont, who's the architect for the project. So he'll provide a brief presentation about some of the architecture, which I think we had a discussion initially with our sketch discussion, but Rob's here to discuss a little more detail how the units will be established, how they're established, the architecture associated with them, and some insight as to how what's going to take place inside the units. And in a few minutes, Rob will be able to discuss that. And I guess ultimately, what I'm looking for, following Rob's presentation is, guidance from this board how to proceed. I mean, we have I guess approvals and ways in which that are required to proceed on this project. So we're looking for some guidance from the board as procedurally how we go from here. Starting with the initial application. So I think I'll have Rob, unless the board has some discussions with the overall site, I'm just going to have Rob provide some discussion as far as the architecture of the proposed units that are associated with the hotel.
Anyone have a question that can't wait?
Well, I don't know if I have a question. I sure don't like the idea of going from 200 to 100 feet and the transparency that would result in, looking at this, pretty complicated, large.
Especially with the parking facing the road.
Mark, the parking is in front of the units that are along on the right side?
Yeah, on the roadside. So
In front.
Rob will get into that with the architecture. All the parking, there's going to be, it'll be roofed parking. So from the units, there's a roof that extends, and so all the parking will be underneath that. Rob, are you going to call it a porch or porch roof?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically covered parking with a shed roof over top, so it'll look more like it's part of the building rather than just an open parking area.
Why doesn't he come up and discuss the architecture? That might help.
Okay.
I actually have some booklets.
Do we have any elevations?
Yeah, there are
Down
3
the road
sheets.
now.
Which file would you like?
Let's see.
The top one.
Okay, arch. Got the word arch in it. Okay, so good evening, everybody. Yes, as Mark explained, we have a loose assortment of buildings that all share the same basic exterior architectural language. I use the town design criteria to inform the design. Basically, the buildings are traditional in style. Rhinebeck Villas really appreciates the Delmar House development. In fact, that rather than one large building, the accommodations are broken up into a series of smaller lodge-like buildings. We have the same idea here. That's what we're interested in doing. We're also restricted to a maximum size of 8,000 gross square feet per building. So what you see here, this first sheet, this is actually one singular administrative and management building. This is about 5,500 square feet. Okay, it's a one-story building. And what it's composed of is, if you look at the floor plan here, this is actually the main entrance drive coming into the front. There's a covered entrance. Hotel lobby is here, where guests will come to check in. This is basically the hotel management right here, these offices. There's basically a large lounge area where all the guests can use. We don't know if breakfast is going to be served like a lot of hotels do, but if it is, this is where people will be able to come and have breakfast. There's also a maintenance shed here for utility workers, and in addition to that, this Route 9G is over here in relation to the building. This wing here is 400 or 500 square foot commercial sub-occupancies, which could be rented out to other tenants, preferably to smaller businesses that would help to support the functions of the property. For example, a housekeeping service or lawn maintenance service, something like that. The elevations here, this is the main entrance facade. The building is well within the height restrictions of the zoning. We have a height of 35 feet allowed by zoning. This building is only about, I think, 26 feet to the peak. Average height is about 24 feet to the taller part. The majority of the building is one story. This taller part is basically this core of the building right here, where the lounge and dining area is. We can look at the next sheet that has the actual hotel building, which is the majority of the buildings. Yes, this one. So we have 7 buildings identical in this style. These are 2-story buildings, 8,000 gross square feet. Each unit contains, or each building contains 8 hotel rooms. And it's actually a combination of single floor above and below, as well as duplex units. The hotel rooms are intended to be a little bit nicer than common hotel rooms. They're larger. They're about 950 gross square feet. The single floor units above and below actually have 2 bedrooms, common bath, a full kitchen, and basically like a living room. And the duplex units have a single bedroom on the second floor with a walk-up inside and a clear story space. The way that the parking regulations work is each hotel unit is required to accommodate 1.5 parking spaces. So these buildings here, since they have 8 apartment units, or 8 hotel units, we have 12 parking spaces associated with that, 1.5 per. And in order to make the building look more lodge-like, especially on that side, this area is actually covered. As you can see it here, as a low shed roof, we're looking at different roofing finishes, but this lower roof here will definitely be metal. There's a rendering which shows the building from all 4 sides. We've also broken up the massing of the building to reduce the size of it, and we've added some decorative features on the top in the form of cupolas, which may actually be ventilating cupolas depending on how we provide the insulation package for the building. So there are 7 of these buildings, 56 units total, and if you go to the last page. This is one building, we basically have 60 units total. This unit is basically a half size, so there's only 4 units in it. But it's basically all the same language as the other buildings with regards to the reverse gables, the clipped gables. The ends of the building have 2-story bay projections. And there is a distinctive front and back to the buildings. The approach side is sort of this covered area where someone can keep their car and then head in to their hotel units. The back side, the more private side, is actually composed of porches. So every unit has a porch. The better units actually face into the woods in the back. Because of the restrictions of the site, some of them actually face into sort of the core of the assembly of the buildings, which is really kind of an open courtyard that people can use as a common space as well. Exterior of the buildings will all be traditional materials. Most likely we're going to be using board and batten, wood, board and batten, and I believe they're all going to be the same color on the outside rather than having variations of colors. But we are leaning towards earth tones for all the colors and materials.
Questions? Comments?
What will the plan be if there's no variance on the setback?
What's the plan, Mark?
So there'll be we've had some discussion with ownership about that. So right now, it's fairly open. So we're going to start the dialogue with the town board, and depending on how we proceed, if it appears unfavorable, we will come back and have further discussion with this board about what to do with the additional parcel, or whether or not there'll be a subdivision of the property at all.
Has there been a change of use since the last we talked about this?
No, same project as presented this summer, Eric.
So it was going to be like a motel at the
It's a
first.
hotel. It's actually, so there's this particular zone allows for hotel by special permit, and then the code speaks to the requirements for the hotel to be allowed by special permit. One is there's a formula that's established that's in place to establish the unit count. So it's based on acreage, and so that's been calculated appropriately to the lot size. Rob mentioned that the buildings, that each unit doesn't exceed 8,000 square feet. That's also part of the town of Rhinebeck code. Not specific to this particular use, but to all commercial structures within the town, except what's the zone where Stamp is located? ORP, with the exception of ORP. So you can't exceed maximum footprint for an individual structure, commercial structure is 6,000 square feet. And so that's been taken into consideration into the layout. And then also, that specific section of the code has a required spacing between buildings also. It's 50 feet of spacing between the buildings. And so that's also been considered as part of the layout for the 7 clusters of hotel units. It's and I don't at our initial sketch discussion, we talked about ownership's intention that these are more allowing for extended stay for these hotel units. And so that's part of the program for the project.
And what is extended stay considered to be?
So actually, we've had taken a look at that. It's not specifically addressed in the zoning code, and I think it's actually is it under consideration now for as part of the discussions with
Well, I think it will be. I think we're going to have to. Now, to my knowledge, you're right. There's no definition of extended stay. There's only short-term rentals, about the only thing, just less than 30 days.
Right, so we actually had the attorney for Rhinebeck Villas is John Marvin, and it's what we came up with is if you have a lease, it's no longer it's no longer part of a hotel, so it's there's nothing that specifically says the length of occupancy per room. But that's something that certainly be developed as part of this project.
So this is like a condo at a lease?
It's a hotel room.
Okay. Well, it's not just a room, it's a whole suite of rooms, right?
Well, it's how many 2 bedrooms, right?
1 and 2 bedroom units, basically, yeah.
And they also have kitchens and bathrooms and
Yeah.
Oh,
they're basically suites. I mean, they're
Right.
dwelling units.
It's like a Marriott.
So it's a condo without a lease, basically, more than a hotel.
They're extended stay hotels. I mean, I've stayed in multiple ones.
Mark, I would suggest when you talk with the village board relative to the upper lot, you explain to them exactly about extended stay, size of those rooms, because from my perspective, I think it's opening a disaster for this community based on what I know thus far.
Yeah, I know,
Because we've had this discussion before.
yeah, you expressed your concern before.
And of course, being so closer to the road, that may be a handicap, because that's a wooded lot. That whole piece is basically woods from the road.
Correct.
And if you're gonna put that many structures and that larger collection of structures, you're gonna have to strip that land of a lot of trees. And I'm not sure if the village would like to do that.
So there's...
Or the town rather shouldn't.
Right, and so that was actually one of the considerations. It was, you know, for the request for the 100-foot setback, because, you know, the initial, when you go out there for the location of these units, there's an open area that's associated with it. There will be clearing required, and then, once again, the reason for the requested setback is, as you go further back into the lot, you get into the wetland. And so the idea was to minimize the amount of disturbance to the wetland and wetland adjacent area. And also, the topography changes pretty dramatically as you go, you know, further to the west.
Yeah.
So, as I started this with, you know, there will be and you know, the applicant is sensitive to that, so there will be a pretty extensive landscape plan that will be developed along Route 9G to, you know, to break up the mass of the buildings and provide some screening for those units located along, you know, near the frontage of 9G. That's the intention.
But there's no area on the other side of that wetland that's available for
No,
instance, those two front units?
Right. Here's the boundary line.
Yep.
Here's the wetland.
Yep. So just on that back triangle there?
Here.
Yeah, that's the one.
Here's setback.
Okay.
So you got this right here.
It's pretty small.
It is, you know, and so you can see, so here's the 100-foot setback line. So I pushed everything, and there is some, and so that 100-foot setback line is the
Buffer line.
Buffer line, yeah. From the wetland is right here. So the units are placed such that, you know, a little bit of regrading goes into that, the adjacent area of the wetland. But, you know, that was the idea, to, once again, working within the town of Rhinebeck code for size of the structure, size of a commercial structure, and allowing a hotel on the property.
What's the backside is a residential neighborhood.
Right here, this is single-family residential.
Right.
Through here, you can, right here, this is a single lot, same thing right here.
Sorry, Mark. Try that again.
Is a lot, and then these are also residential lots. So we're providing some screening and buffering to those, and then, once again, here are the wetlands, and then the adjacent areas associated with it.
But Mark, if the, whatever that other event center is not a go, and the land is not subdivided, then there would be more land on which to do something that provided more screening from everybody, right?
Well, when you take a look at it also, and then there's all, so it's right here. So here's, you know, wetland here, wetland adjacent areas. So there's a small section right here. Here are the setbacks here. So there's a small area here in which it could accommodate some units. The one thing to consider is, you know, the development of, you know, more road infrastructure if it's to be connected. You know, if it's all going to be one complex, you would want some connectivity to, you know, a single administration building, and so that it's this road has to go through and connect to it. So, you know, as we proceed, we intend on, you know, going to the town board and try to get read on where the town board stands on this. And so it may affect, ultimately, full development of the property.
Is the event center critical to the financial success of the project if it stands alone as a hotel?
I can, I can't speak to that. I can certainly reach out to Villas and have some information for our next meeting. But I think right now, we wouldn't, wouldn't proceed unless this would support itself.
Okay. Well, that whole section that you have, the well and the wastewater, that could be available for that other tranche of buildings that are close to the road.
So with regard to wastewater, this is a kind of a key location for the wastewater. Because of the way that the wetland regulations are crafted in the town, there's only one place that I can discharge a wastewater treatment plant. So, because right now this property here is Four Brothers, and so there's from Four Brothers, they have a surface discharge to this wetland area here.
Really?
And so then right here is a culvert pipe. And so the idea is for the connection of the sanitary sewer into that culvert pipe. Because when you read the wetland ordinance that the town developed, you can't discharge directly into the wetland. And so this provides a conduit in order to allow for discharge. So that was, and once again, trying to be centrally located, but wanted the wastewater treatment plant to be located generally in this area.
One of my favorites on multiple buildings like this is contacting Dutchess Wastewater, the county system, rather than have that, because as you know, we've been through this before, the town had a system that went belly up. It was multiple owners around it. The town got stuck with the bill for maintaining it. The town does not want to get stuck with maintaining this bill either, assuming it goes belly up. So my encouragement to you and your applicant is talk with Dutchess County Wastewater and see if that's not an alternative.
Is that an alternative, Tom?
Yeah, they would consider it, because it's kind of the charter of the organization.
Because they're picking up a lot of stuff along.
Right.
And condominiums and everything else.
Well, the thing is, with water authority, just in full disclosure, I'm the chairman of the organization. They have...
Tom, could you? They couldn't hear
Sure.
what we're saying. So Tom LeGrand is also here?
I'm chairman of the Dutchess County Water and Wastewater Authority.
There you go.
And this is part of our...
What am I looking for?
This is part of our charter, and more, because local municipalities do not want to be in the sewer and water business. And I was instrumental in working with Supervisor Spenzia when she first got elected to help the town with that situation you're referring to. And, this is more and more. I mean, more and more the communities want to get out of the sewer and water business because they have no economy of scale. They don't have professional staff to deal with it. So we're taking on more and more projects like this. Actually, we're just the one we did locally, working with Joe Kirchhoff up there on his development that he's doing right at the 102-unit project. And when that's fully developed, we'll be taking that over as well. So that is a mission statement.
Okay.
Okay?
When you were talking about the design of the building, you used the word lodge, I believe.
Yeah.
And it does strike me as that. I mean, it reads to me kind of the Adirondack Lodge. I don't find it really all that compatible with the design standards for Rhinebeck. I find it a little I don't see anything in this design that really speaks Rhinebeck to me. It's handsome. It's not that I dislike the way it looks, but I do find it lodge-like, which is the word you used.
It's massing wise, yes, but in its use of materials, it will not be overly rustic.
Well, certainly what you presented to me looks very rustic.
We're also still working on the renderings as well.
Well, then maybe you shouldn't give me something that misleads me into thinking that it's very far afield from what I would like to see in Rhinebeck.
What suggestions would you make on the exterior? Is it color?
I would suggest
It's that it just looks,
pound
it
over
just
for now.
screams what I didn't know what he.
Well, that's what we were looking for input from the board as to what they
Well, I
felt
think you
was
should take our
appropriate.
design standards and look at all the references that are in there.
I did.
Okay, and this was something that struck you as
Well,
looking like Rhinebeck?
You know, there's a lot of pictures in there of buildings in the town. They talk about materials. Board and batten specifically is mentioned. Metal roofs are mentioned.
Yeah.
Belfries, spires. They're all, you know, quoted on buildings that are in the town, as
Sure.
well as trying to reduce the massing. They even talk about roof pitch, which we've tried to follow as
And
well.
I think independently, one by one, the ones you just mentioned, I mean, I think of the Delamater House in terms of your vertical board and batten, but the massing of that is much, you know, it is more vertical certainly than this, which strikes me as very horizontal.
Right, because that was a single-family house.
Yeah, and the other question I had that, Mark, maybe you can answer is, in looking at the percentage of 1- and 2-bedroom units, how do they break down over the total of 50-something?
It's 50-50.
50% of them are 1-bedroom and 50% are 2-bedroom.
Correct.
And all of them have the kitchens in them?
Yes.
Okay, so did you consider at any point any portion of this simply being single guest rooms as in a regular hotel?
No.
Okay, because that would change, obviously, the square footage of the overall project.
Right.
Not necessarily the number of rooms, but the square
Were you
footage.
saying that you thought that these buildings were larger than the Delmarva buildings?
Well, certainly this, to me,
You know, I don't believe it is though, when you go to the back in the courtyard, where the courtyard is.
I'm talking about the Delamater house, that's
Oh,
what I was
yeah,
referencing.
okay.
Not the buildings
But I
in
mean,
the
where the
back.
units are in the back, around in the courtyard.
Right.
I believe they're bigger, I think they're
Well,
taller.
they may be. I
and I
was
believe they're longer.
I can't say, I haven't
You know
gone
what
and
I'm talking
mentioned.
about, though, where they have
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah.
courtyard. I
We looked
believe
at all
they're
those
longer.
buildings as a model.
I believe they're quite a bit taller.
I was speaking specifically about the Delamater
Yeah.
house that faces Route 9.
Other comments?
The Sangamore up in, on Lake George has a similar set of complexes. They have the main hotel and then they have all the, I'll call them lodges, because I don't know what they call them, down along. And so they're joined together, but you don't have a main building that is the centerpiece. Everything is the centerpiece, basically. Okay. I'm a little concerned about the size of the individual rooms. Because I see this happening as all of a sudden, it doesn't really work as a hotel and it's a long-term reservation, and now all of a sudden it becomes partially an apartment complex. And
Well, that kind of speaks to what Mr. Trimble was talking about with the previous applicant. I mean, if that happened, that would be, I mean, they're not allowed to do that, so they would have to,
You'll be coming back to talk to us.
yeah.
Technically, you know, the hotel use can only go for 30 days by law, but again, it's a, you know, a regular.
is that what the number is?
The definition, yes, states 30 days, but that's not.
Can you point to any examples of such a complex anywhere nearby that?
Well, the Delamater house was the one that we modeled it on. You know, there was the original building in the front, but then there's the assemblage of buildings in the back, which have the hotel units. And in fact, I've had clients that have stayed there, and they like that type of accommodation.
And those are 1- and 2-bedroom?
Well, I don't know, I haven't stayed there, you know, in fact, I worked for a gentleman that was in a wheelchair, and he liked it because it was also handicap accessible, so it was very accommodating. And that one, they serve breakfast in sort of the administrative, one of those administrative buildings, because that's where I would meet them to have design meetings when we were designing their house.
You talking elevators as well? to
No.
the second level?
No, but there are so many ground floor levels, we'll be able to have plenty of units that'll be accessible easily.
You know, I think, Mike, you were talking about the concern about the demand. We really feel it's going to be, there's a tremendous demand for it.
Yeah,
If you look at the way they built 4 major units over in Kingston, and I think a lot of people coming into the area would prefer to be in Rhinebeck than be in Ulster County. And I mean, if you look at what they built over there, they kind of look like college dorms. So I really think,
Motel one.
well, in the exterior, it was like college dorms. That's the one up by Sam's Club, certainly it looks like to me. And my belief is that, you know, with all this going on all around, I mean, Rhinebeck's really done a job in terms of being a magnet for tourism and, you know, what's going on at the fairgrounds and what's going on all over the place. I don't think occupancy is going to be any problem at all.
My sister's a good example. She just came this weekend to visit my father, and she had to stay at the Marriott courtyard on the other side. She would have much rather been over here.
I guess the question I have, it seems that the variance.
Michael, I can't hear you.
It seems that the variance for the buffer zone is probably critical,
Yes.
given the physical constraints on the property. You really can't move it back any further west. I'm getting my compass right here. And you're already before the ZBA, I believe, or the application into them? Or?
Well, yeah, yes, so, but the ZBA was adamant that well, once again, we're back to seeker on this, right?
They want us to.
Right, so the planning board needs to initiate, I needed to initiate an application with the planning board so that we could, you know, develop seeker, or, you know, go through the seeker process. So, once again, I mentioned that John Marvin's the applicant's attorney. He spoke to John Lyons. And so there's I have a memo from John Lyons that, because I was trying to get, you know, the 100 foot is critical on this. And so I was trying to be quite honest, avoid all the design work, right?
Yes.
And the expense and the time with this board
Yeah,
to go through that.
Yeah.
But in order for this, so my understanding is in order for this board to make a determination, so the ZBA can make a determination, we have to go through it.
Okay, that was my question, actually. Do you want to go to the ZBA first before? But yes,
I did.
generally, yeah.
And so that's where we reached out to John Lyons, you know, it's the process, and so that was my initial approach, because to me it made common sense in order to do that, just to avoid not only the expense to my client, but the time for this board to go through the application. But that's, from my understanding, and Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, I think we have to, so this board needs to make a secret determination so the ZBA can proceed. One of the things that, the last time I met with the ZBA and I walked out of there, you know, they want, with regard to those units placed along the frontage of 9G, they want, you know, a good photorealistic rendering of what they're going to look like. We'll have to have a detailed landscape plan associated with it before they'll even, start to, consider the application. And so both applications can run concurrently,
Yes.
but I need to go through seeker with this board, I believe.
Yeah, I think the only other option would be to go to the town board and ask them, the event center, you're asking for rezoning to, create a different buffer, a different setback along Route 9G in that particular district. But Lord knows how long that would take.
Right.
So, yeah, you're kind of caught between a big rock and a big hard place.
Right, so.
I understand.
So, I'm assuming in order to, for this board to make a determination, we need to go through the issues. So we need to handle traffic, we need to handle, site disturbance and grading and drainage, landscaping and lighting associated with it. there's, associated, so the wetlands shown, are based on field delineations, and there's also, a habitat analysis that's associated with the project also. So that's been handled. I think it's just, the, development of the, grading stormwater, stormwater management, landscaping, lighting, the architecture, right? It's, like we need to have some more input with the planning board with regard to architecture. I'm assuming those are all seeker issues, and then obviously circulation to involved and interested agencies to start the process.
Well, I think it's something we want to have a workshop.
I'm
just to go
thinking
over
this
some of
might be
these.
worthy of a workshop.
Okay.
I really would envision this being much more of a working session. Jim, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that, certainly, I think to work through some of the issues, I think a workshop would be good.
But just, I think, the one other thing you mentioned, though, I think that years ago when Dr. Tumlo was looking to purchase this property to build a major veterinary clinic, they did grant him a variance for a 100-foot setback instead of the 200. That was, and that was probably, 10, 12 years ago, right, Mark?
Before
I
the
did.
current zone.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that, from the time we started looking at the project on the site, we all agreed that, we really want to try to avoid encroaching on our wetland area if possible.
No, I agree.
Well, I think, I'm not entirely familiar, but my observation driving that is there's such a variety of setbacks there, pre-existing, where we're going. I kind of like to understand that a little more. It would help me look at it.
Okay. I can provide that. In other words, would you like us to provide that information?
I think it would be helpful for
Yeah,
us to
okay.
understand that, it's not like we're looking at something that's uniform right now. So maybe it would help to inform me a little more. I agree with Tom. I think there is an enormous need in Rhinebeck for lodging. Not just Rhinebeck, but in Northern Dutchess, because we would be serving, the Bard community, and the loss of revenue to Kingston is something I think we all like to avoid. We'd like to keep people here. So I support the concept of what's happening here. I just think we have a ways to go in terms of, we're over here looking at this and saying, this doesn't look like Rhinebeck.
No, that's just a simple illustration. Obviously, it would be more detailed with.
Yeah, and I know it's just for here, but these things tend to get out in the community, and the
Understood.
zoning board's looking at it, and what's it gonna look like, and somehow I think I'm driving into the western frontier here.
Okay.
When I look at this, and sometimes it's hard to go back and overcome that,
Understood.
to get it out of your mind once you've seen it.
Okay.
So,
Also, it looks like the extent of the landscaping is just to add a single row of conifers, and that just doesn't look very natural or anything.
Right, and so that, as I indicated, there'll be a detailed landscaping plan associated with the project. And so that's part of our next step. I was hopeful to be able to, start the process tonight with the board as, as circulation of the project, or it would be circulation for lead agency too.
Well, so that's a question. So I didn't see in my review, are you disturbing more than 10 acres? It sounds like you're assuming it's a type 1. The type 1 thresholds are pretty high, but if you're disturbing more than 10 acres, then I think we would have to make it a type 1. I was assuming originally it was just unlisted. Not coordination needed, but I guess it was.
No, I don't think we,
I guess I'm trying to figure out what issues we have. Excuse me. Or what, how we classify it, I guess.
7.4 acres.
So it's under 10.
It's under
I'm just trying to figure out, it sounded like you were thinking that this might be a type 1, trying to figure out what threshold it might be.
Yeah, but I was thinking, but it could be unlisted with a coordinated review, correct?
Well, yeah, if that's what we
And that's
want.
what we would probably do, given the nature of the project and the different entities, Dutchess County Health, Dutchess County Water and Wastewater may well be involved in terms of the plan for future use.
New York State DOT, I thought I listed all, I mean, that was my assumption.
No, I think that makes sense. I was just looking strictly at the criteria and trying to figure out where we hit that threshold. But I think if we want to go the approach of unlisted, coordinated,
And it
it
doesn't
would make sense
limit-
because there is a lot going on.
Right.
And it doesn't limit what we can look into.
No.
So.
Mike,
it's easy.
the other thing I think we have to do too is, since it's a major project, is I think the whole gang has to
Yes, just like this.
trudge through that property, probably as it is right now, just to get a level of what we're dealing with.
During
And we're
daylight.
all talking about the same thing, not all different ideas.
Site visit, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, as a gang, as a group, not
Daylight site
two
visit.
individuals or three individuals.
Sure,
At some point,
Well,
or if we have to break it up.
we could go tomorrow.
We could. Now we got a guy that's got equipment that can get us around there.
No, that's a great idea, Woody, and I can stake out the buildings, I can,
It'll save you a lot of aggravation trying to explain to us what the contours are.
okay.
At least on a lay level.
Understood, and actually, it's a good time of the year to go, when it warms up and not so much snow on the ground.
Or at least if they're, especially the wetlands, even if it's cold, where the land's set up, it's easy to walk on.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
Mark, is the delineation between the two parcels, is that set in stone at this point? or-
No.
Okay.
Oh, the only thing that's set, Eric, is, as I mentioned before, for the unit count for the hotel, there's a formula,
Yeah,
and so
so you can't reduce the land area of that parcel,
I think I can a little, I didn't put it right.
but you could increase that land area.
I can increase it.
Okay, I'm still looking at that section behind Four Brothers, and it looks like you could move most of those units that are encroaching on 100 foot back into that area if you just relocated your wastewater. And it's just, I hate to see taking all that, removal of those trees and putting those massive buildings so close to the road.
Thing is, all right, well, once again, I think a site visit would be great, because, the topography.
Sure, no, I can't tell anything from a map about what's really there, so.
Yeah, so, and it's it's in this map, but it doesn't show up that, you see that, like here,
Got a little ridge there?
Yeah.
Solid rock.
right.
Is,
Make for a
are
solid
the
foundation.
wetlands flagged now? Or have you?
We did that, we flagged the wetlands.
I'm just trying to see if they would be easily distinguished.
They are.
Okay.
It's very evident where they are.
Okay.
I think we want to do a multi-phase thing here, proceed with the application, arrange, and we may have to get all 7 planning board members together at once, and we have to, whatever, do that. And I think also, probably as we've done with the other large projects, just set up a workshop session with the planning board.
Okay.
Outside the public hearing thing, all of that, just to really sit down and really start going over it right here. Anyone else we think might be helpful to us to have them here to really try and hammer some of the different details out.
Okay. That's
and
a great
we can
idea.
schedule that once we get this up and running. We can certainly open the public hearing February 3rd, just to get it started. Also, so we can circulate at that point to
Do-
different agencies.
So, did you say February? So that gives us some time to develop so we can get a better landscape plan
Yes.
developed.
And also go out and maybe get a clear day when we actually get out there and
Okay.
camp around.
And I would think, as I mentioned to the architect a while back, when you decide to show us the design of the buildings, if you have a couple ideas that might be a little bit different one from the other, bring them all. We'll take them around,
Okay.
particularly at a workshop.
Well, I have a resolution here.
Oh, did you have some?
Just really quick, I have a bunch of little questions, a little late, because we're gonna do a workshop, but regarding the event use and going to the town board, I don't know if I heard like a timeline on that, we talked about the ZBA. What is the proposal or your thoughts on that? Are you gonna run that concurrently with these other two, essentially starting today?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the intention.
So submit the request for the zone change to the town board? And
Yes.
start that process, okay.
Yes. Anything else, Jim?
Nope, the others can wait.
Okay.
Okay. Here we go. Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board hereby acts as follows on the application by Charles Jacob for site plan approval. Wait a minute. Is that the applicant?
It's
No,
Rhinebeck
it's
Villas.
Rhinebeck Villas, yes. No, that's right.
Rhinebeck Villas LLC.
Rhinebeck Villas LLC. Okay. At least I realized it wasn't Charles Jacob. For site plan approval, special use permit, wetlands permit, and minor subdivision of the town code, chapter 125, section 12572, 12565, section 124, and section 1011, respectively, for the construction of a hotel, motel, and consideration of an event center as a second phase not currently permitted by zoning within the Gateway North zoning district. Accepts the application and supporting documents as adequate for initial review by the planning board, its advisors, and the public. Classifies the proposed action as unlisted under secret. And I'll just leave it at that, because the neighbors should be coordinated.
You used the word hotel and motel.
It's designed.
Have both of those words in there, or just one, like hotel?
It's a hotel motel.
Okay, because he's applying for a hotel.
Oh, it's a hotel, not a motel?
It's a hotel.
And then you get rid of motel.
Because that'll take us down a
Yeah.
different legal path.
Construction of a hotel and consideration of event center. All right. And we're going to classify it as a proposed action, as an unlisted action under seeker, for which coordinated environmental quality review is desired. We're going to schedule a public hearing in the application for February 3rd at 7, and direct the clerk to undertake and otherwise cause noticing and posting thereof, and now get us started. We're going to delegate all members of the planning board to conduct a field visit to the project site to report their observations at the time of the public hearing, and we'll coordinate that with you as to when that will happen. In accordance with Town Code Chapter 9, Conservation Advisory Board, we refer the application to the Conservation Advisory Board for review and written comment concerning environmental factors. In accordance with Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development 239, Planning and Zoning referral, we refer the application to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development for review. We refer the application to the New York State Department of Transportation for comments related to ingress and egress into Route 9G. And I think we're going to leave it at that, because I think we're a little premature authorizing a date for approval resolution.
I think so.
So I think that's the resolution we have right now. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Okay,
Thank you.
we're good to go.
Thank you.
We'll get started. We'll get in touch with you about the field visit, and also we can maybe schedule the workshop with the planning board, you know.
Oh, so when can we do that tonight?
Schedule what? The workshop?
Workshop
I
tonight?
think it's,
No, it's too late.
we're talking about the ones that we do offline with, like Ray and other people, not a full board version.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Okay.
It's just to get some of those straightened out, and then,
Great.
once again, we'll do what we normally do, is then once we get rolling, you work with Ray, you don't do the planning board, you work with Ray.
Okay. Great.
Which hopefully will move things along a little bit.
Okay.
Better to get in and
Yeah,
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
thank you.
I think, Mark, in fact, you want to reach out to him and just talk to him about what's coming up.
I will actually want to update him on for Rock Ridge also.
Okay. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
all have a great holiday. Hope we don't get too much snow, and take care. I have a motion to adjourn.
What is up to you now?
Second? All in favor?
Oh.
Very good. We stand adjourned.